was that, and I don't mean this offensively, you're very casual with respect to following the story.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I
I
couldn't have
mean,
imagined you'd actually give a crap about Aurene dying here because I didn't know you had any like.
oh, I didn't really,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, yeah. The thing is, I played PvP for a long time, right? So I didn't do any story during that. But when I swapped to raids, I started doing that stuff. So I've done the recent ones and some of the previous ones, but much less one of the previous ones.
Okay, because I remember like watching your streams, you were the kind of person that would just not care about any currencies, if I'm not confusing with you anyone else, and just sort of just
Oh yeah, I
it was
threw away the
about
box.
the Heart of the Mist style stuff. So yeah,
Vallun,
that makes
Vallun, I
sense.
think we're live, right?
Yeah, we're
Yeah, yeah,
live.
yeah.
Can you hear me?
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he said we're live.
Yeah, we're live.
Oh, I didn't hear that. I just heard.
Yeah.
I just saw all of a sudden the screen came up.
All right, well let me
Hi,
tweet
world.
that you're live then.
There we go. Host.
Yeah, Deroir is like pixelated.
Oh, value.
Is it because you like kind of made the screen so small, or?
Yeah, I had to like make it larger because Discord is like you can make him smaller and less pixelated.
Oh yeah, you should probably also have Discord on full screen, or should have had, I guess.
Oh, it's too late for that.
Too
now.
late.
Or you just
Yeah,
go
it's
for
too late for
that.
that. Yeah, that's okay. Pixelated casters, or whatever. What are they called for?
So, what?
Hmm?
I didn't really watch WP your first impressions of the story. Did you actually like it?
Yeah, I have a weird thing though with the game where this is gonna sound really weird, but what I enjoy is not necessarily the story itself or the emotion of the moment itself, but just when I see that they're delivering things well, like, and it's so much better than the personal story and when the game came out. Like, I love it and I'm like beaming, I'm really happy, but I'm happy because not because I feel it's good, but because I know it's good kind of thing. Like, the big moment at the end of the story where, it's the shock horror. My actual comment as it was going on was I said out loud, like all enthusiastically, I was like, "Oh, they've implemented the co-op really well," and like that was actually how I felt at the time. I was like, "Oh, that's really cool," but like I find it hard to sort of fully forget about all that stuff and just actually enjoy it for what it is. But yeah, I thought I did. I thought it was really good.
When
I can completely emphasize with that actually, or empathize with
Yeah.
that, because
Yeah,
like,
like when they move the
we've
camera
spent,
and stuff,
yeah,
you're
we've
like,
spent so many years just like dissecting the story and like going into the deep of why this is not hitting the right beats and whatnot. All of a sudden, I'm just like, it's an occupational hazard. I've gotten scarred. I can't stop thinking about it when I'm playing through the story now.
yeah,
also
The
feel
story
like
beats. Yeah.
kind of like the difference between like experiencing the story and then like actually going into the story. So like my first impression of the story was actually kind of like poor, but then when I remembered all of the stuff happening before and like you take it all as one, and then like even listening to the dev live stream, right, where they talk about all the things that they did and you kind of get an idea of like how they go through it and they're thinking about all of these different things, and it's like, well, there's this like, it's kind of like a lot deeper than you think it is, and that kind of makes it more interesting, but also at the same time it's like, well, why do I need to like get that deep into it to like enjoy it, right?
yeah. I always feel a bit miffed a lot of the time. I really like watching their live streams and seeing what they say, all the details and how much they scrutinize every little moment. But I always feel a little bit bad because quite often, clearly a lot of work goes into this stuff and a lot of philosophy and thought goes into it. But some of these instances are really short just because of the inherent like gameplay loop to Guild Wars 2. You kind of do your thing and you get on very quickly. And I always feel kind of bad because it's like all this effort and attention and thought goes into these moments that players whisk through really quickly. So, like, I often try and notice as much as I can because I feel like if I don't catch it, you only get a limited window while you're in that instance to see and try and dissect everything. If you don't catch it, the odds are, so much that they think about is just gone. So, it's a mixed bag for me that I feel almost bad when I see how much goes into a lot of the instances, and
Yeah.
sometimes it just goes over my head.
I think almost all of us are pretty much the same when it comes to the story. So we don't so much. We're not so much phased by it, but we know that it's good or better at least, right? Do you think that other people actually feel that it's better rather than just no?
Yeah, definitely. I think that you can say that this patch is good for one reason. Like you can look at the broader community and like creative stuff that people have done, like video montages and music videos and art and stuff that they've done about it. Like it's clearly captured people because there's been a real uptick from this release in discussion about the story and all that kind of stuff. I think and that doesn't happen unless they hit people on some kind of an emotional level, does it? I think that's evidence
No, I
enough
agree.
that people,
Yeah, yeah.
people really liked it.
I'm just
For
not
finally, we're
walking.
seeing hundreds of theories and everything pop up everywhere.
Yeah.
The interaction from the community is just like it's not even comparable to anything prior in this entire season. Like nobody's really talked about anything this much.
Like I hate that I can't
Yeah.
properly plug them. I can't remember what their username was, but some guy on YouTube made this unbelievable like video where he cut together snippets from like season 2 and season 3 and POF and just everything together to kind of encapsulate the story of Aurene and like pay off on like this sad emotional beat that was this recent episode. And it was
Was it
phenomenal. It was really good. Clearly it had a lot of work put into it. You know, you don't galvanize people into that unless they really, really care. Do you guys know what I'm talking about with that video?
was it the video called what's it called? I am not him. I think
I
that's what he
think so.
called.
Yeah. It was
Yeah,
some
I saw
cheesy
that.
name like
It's
that.
really
Exactly.
good. Really
Yeah, it
well
was
made.
amazing.
I could have used to see that. Rip.
It was the kind of thing where people were like, "Oh, this should have been in game." You know, I remember one comment on the YouTube on the video said, "You know, I felt a bit of something maybe in game, but you made me feel the emotion of this story beat way more than the devs even did." Blah blah blah, and you know, like it was a
Yeah, because
real
I think
benefit.
I think there's a real disconnect that happens between players sometimes when the episodes take so long to come out. Like we kind of forget all the little
The effort that they
details
put into it.
that yeah, exactly, all the effort, all the little details that lead up to that moment being so grand, and so it really only resonates fully with the people that really like hone in on all these details and remember what was said and what happened between these characters and whatnot.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
so,
with Living World, that gap between releases is like extremely profound to look at in terms of like them telling a full story. Like this, the finale of last season, right? On Siren's Landing, generally is regarded plot structure by most people, and I don't argue this is the truth, but to have been kind of weak because it was, you know, it felt a little bit tacked on, and we even see the real world reasons why that might have been, and people feel like it was kind of fillery, and you know they have their issues with aspects of it. But the thing is, if you just start Guild Wars 2 today and you play through all those episodes, let's say we push the inconvenience of the gem acquisition stuff aside, you play it all through.
mhm.
Siren's Landing isn't as egregious as it otherwise might have been in terms of being a filler episode or a
Yeah,
diversion or
because
whatever.
isn't it? I think it's Hot Flash, or what is the episode before it? That's kind of like the climax, isn't it?
Yeah, Flashpoint is
Yeah,
that you
Flashpoint.
can see basically is the finale in most ways, right? But it doesn't feel so bad, and so there's these weird things about this, like Deroir. I mentioned this on one of my streams. If people don't know, ArenaNet did a live stream where they aggregated lots of footage from people's reactions. Deroir's reaction to the finale of this episode, he said he like got up out of his chair and he said, "I'm so glad we lost." Right? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Now, my commentary on your response there, and for a lot of people, was actually to a certain extent I don't understand that, because if you unpack the story itself in the actual moments, I think we have had lots of losses. I think, for example, us dying during Path of Fire was a big loss, but because that happened just in the middle of the expansion, we get to keep playing and we aren't forced to linger on it because of the break. It's easier to push aside. But now we feel like we've lost and we've got this big cliffhanger of months to sit on it. And it just because of how it's packaged, it's got nothing to do with the dialogue or anything, but because of how it's released, it creates a bigger narrative beat than it otherwise would have been. And I think that's really, really interesting to look at, right?
I completely agree. I think it's one of the reasons why the story of the expansion is just. I mean, it feels a lot of the beats there feel a lot more glossed over. Like it doesn't feel like you were saying, like we actually lost there compared to the seasons where it just there's a big drop off. We get to stop and speculate about all the little details in between.
But
I
it's
like
almost like
that.
we're making an argument it's a good thing right now. Isn't there the other side of the coin? It's not a good thing having the gaps?
I
I
mean,
mean,
there's
I think it could
there's
be made up
positive
for
and
with
negative.
like recaps and stuff, right? I mean, like you said, the video was really good, right? At least people liked it, right? So you could have that sort of stuff made by ArenaNet, so it would feel less like, disconnected
Yeah,
at least,
maybe.
and maybe other people that only go in for that living story thing would get on board a little bit easier. I don't know.
That's kind of tough to say because like at what point does the content become not like disconnected, because like one expansion to the next is disconnected, right? So at some point you're gonna have to have a disconnect, right?
Yeah, of course.
Well,
So,
see,
I mean,
I that's interesting to me because I think Path of Fire suffered in terms of garnering casual audience enthusiasm in its story and stuff because it was so intricately tied to season 3 before it, right? Like if I went to my nan and said, "Yeah, you know how you play World of Warcraft? I want you to get into this other MMO. There's a new expansion coming out." And she says, "What's the story?" Right? How am I get There's no easy access for it. I can say, "Oh, we go to the desert to fight a god." And you can try and boil it down, but everything unravels like instantly, right? The second you actually start playing, people are referring to a million events to do with prior living world, and that's really good for like us nerds, I think. Particularly, I'll say, I play every episode, so I love that it's all intricately woven. But are the expansions really separate? Is there a big distinction
no, I think they do a
story
pretty
wise?
good job of making them pretty concise. So like they do design them very well to like be replayable and kind of like for someone to catch up very quickly if they are new to the game.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you're a new, like you're a veteran, like you play an episode and you're like, oh, I beat the whole episode in one day, right? Well, there's always like a good and bad to everything, right? And well, new players get through that content faster too, and that allows them to catch up. But like veterans, kind of like they have to kind of deal with those content droughts. But there are definitely ways to like bridge that with like other game modes, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think
So
it's that bad.
Frosty, is your experience then? You've quite recently played through a large bulk, or am I misunderstanding?
not really. I only really played the recent episode that came out because I think I played the previous one or something like that. I'm actually not sure. It's like okay. So there's all the new living story maps, right? I've not played all of the stories to do with those. Yeah. I mean, I've
Oh,
played
okay.
some of them, but some of the maps I've not even been in. Like Istan, I
Yeah,
don't
like
know.
you did
Like I don't
the
even know if these have
you
stories.
went to Siren's Landing for the first time like a week ago,
Yeah,
I remember.
yeah, exactly.
Wow,
That's
so you're like leapfrogging all over the place.
yep, yep.
Literally,
Is that
he's just doing
enjoyable?
the jumping puzzles there.
Yeah, I'm just jumping.
Jumping puzzle master, yes.
Funny. Oh, does that mean you? This is a total tangent. Then does this mean you only just did the Chalice of Tears?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I didn't really do it. I kind of like I kind of just flew on top of it, right?
Oh,
From
what?
yeah.
Why
So you
would you do
cheated.
Yeah,
that?
Griffin.
I like cheating and jumping puzzles. I don't like doing them normally.
He made a whole segment with
Oh yeah,
cheating
video.
and Frosty cheats. You need a jingle for it.
So what is it? Just that Mounts broke it then, basically.
I mean, Mounts broke almost every jumping puzzle. I mean, I can link you the video, but yeah.
Yeah, you can
I-
link the video in chat.
the
Yeah, I'll
newest
put
one
it
is
in chat.
the Bond of Faith,
Yeah.
Yeah,
which I think was what Frosty was using for the most part to just kind of destroy every single
Do you guys want to talk
jumping
I was
puzzle in
thinking-
that sense.
I was thinking
Bond
about
Faith.
Bond of Faith, right? It looks like on paper a really basic thing to just sort of add, right? But I've got to rewind and think about when POF came out, they had their QA or whatever. They had to go with a fine tooth comb over every map and put invisible walls and try to stop the Springer essentially breaking everything too much. So it's all calibrated for the Springer. And then it's kind of amazing to me that now in this episode, the devs were like, yeah, okay, we're just going to tack an extra bit of height onto the end of the Springer now. I feel like that has to have broken a million things. I just don't know where, it just seems they can't have checked everywhere to account for that now. It's got to be
I
even
don't
more.
really think that they actually checked for it. I maybe I'm being cynical here, but I don't actually think that the jumping puzzles really matter to most players anymore. Like in any capacity, maybe just for the like novelty fun, but other than that, it's
I mean,
yeah.
they make it so that you can't just straight jump to the end like by just doing a Springer thing, but I don't think they care that much if you just go out of your way to do it. And I don't think Bonafide is a huge deal in a way, because the people that will use it in the map break sort of way probably already knew that you can dismount from the Springer while using the jump skill and then use the Griffin afterwards and just kind of break the game like that. So it's kind of like you already had the skill, but now you can do a bit more stuff with it. So that's nice. It's a nice skill. I like it.
It's great. I've been wanting something like that for a long time. Not
Do
to
you guys
necessarily
think-
break jumping puzzles, but yeah.
Here's a weird question. Do you guys think that we'll get because obviously they're unlocking the utility skills while in your mount. Let's say next mastery is something for the final
Yeah, this is
utility.
what we were talking about.
It's
Do you
definitely
think
going to be
we'll get
something
an
for-
elite.
I've been thinking about that. I can't imagine what an elite mount skill would be.
Well,
Like
there's
there's
two
no
kinds of
real
elites, right?
yeah.
You could have an elite that fundamentally changes it by being quite spammable, or you could have an elite that's got a really exaggerated effect, but is very rarely common, right? Sort of the headbutt versus rampage sort of distinction, if you get what I mean.
Me and
But
So
Frosty.
what kind of elite
what
would
would
they
you,
go?
the utility be? Because like I can imagine I think the third utility might be stealth. Like that's a
Well,
that's
if
a niche
you
that
look at
everything kind of
them,
misses.
they're all dealing with Arene, right? So it's like if you read like the tooltips of all the bond of vigor and the bond of faith, it says something like channel your relationship with Arene, right? But Arene is dead now, so me and Frosty were coming up with this idea that it would be like bond of spirit or something, where like you kind of like remember
Assume the
Arene or
form.
something, and then it like lifts you up or something. You know, it's like this uplifting thing. Maybe that could be the next one in the next episode. It's the
I mean,
finale.
I don't know
So.
about what it would be, but it's interesting to think about that. Do you think Aurene will resurrect before or after the skill comes?
Well, this gets really complicated as well because wasn't at the anniversary, the game director essentially said there was going to be another full new mount this season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, not this season. He never said this season.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. There's a lot of interpretation there, but he never said this season. He said
Did he say
there's another
soon?
mount. No, he just said there's another mount coming
Okay.
the players wasn't expecting, and that's it. That's about the extent of the quote. There's a lot of interpretation there going, oh yeah, it's this season, or
Wasn't
Well,
it a
we
pretty
don't
long
know.
time ago too? Like a
oh,
few
it's
months
way.
back?
It was like episode 2 or something.
Yeah,
It's
a long
8
time
months,
ago.
6 months ago. It's
8 months?
it's
Holy
ages.
shit.
It's
That's a
ages
long ass
ago.
time.
And
Yeah,
and
okay.
all of a sudden the quote kind of popped back up on Reddit not too long ago.
Yeah, I think it was after the Beetle though, so it has to have been episode 3 or later. I thought it was with the anniversary. I thought it was, around summer or something. But that means what that would mean then is if they're doing Aurene's dead, whether she resurrects or not, maybe next episode she's not around at all, and that
Yeah,
gives them
maybe.
time to do a new mount and then the masteries of that, and then maybe that's the thing. But I was wondering with the elite whether it'd be, I don't know how this would tie into Aurene, but one thing I'd really love on a mount, and I want it so much I don't even know if it should be a mastery. I wonder if it should just be quality of life. The ability to be able to swap between mounts without dismounting.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
actually
Skimmer
said this
in
exactly
combat.
as well.
Yeah,
That was one of
and
the
get on the
things I
Raptor
wanted.
without.
Because
Yeah.
like you have to get off your mount, and then so it's like you have to kind of think like how, like what are the limitations of the mounts, and then make a mastery that like removes those limitations, right? And one of the bigger limitations is like you have to get off the mount and then get on the next mount, especially if you don't have like hotkeys.
There was a great bug for the longest time where you could do exactly that.
Oh really? How did that work?
Yeah, if you spammed the swap button fast enough, both of them at the same time, like the one that you were on and the next one that you were going to, it would hot swap instantaneously in the air.
See,
It was fixed at one point. I think it's gone.
it's a really weird thing because Path of Fire, I think the design of Path of Fire is really muddy in terms of like the why isn't that already a thing in the game? Because obviously it's so much quality of life. The only answer for that can be that if you're in combat and you've got to get off the Raptor to get on the Springer, the devs actually want you to be forced onto regular games so that you use your profession skills, and you're like what they're doing is they're playing with how much exploration they want on mount versus off mount, and they want there to be a mix. That can be the only answer, right? So then to do it as a mastery later kind of defies that. So that's why I think it might be the elite, because if their original idea was they do want you to be on the ground a bit, then the elite would just be on a really high cooldown for, the hot swap
So you
kind of
want
thing.
to be able to mount while in combat?
No, I think if you're already on a mount though, and you're on a Raptor, and now you've got to get on a Springer, you can trigger the elite to hot swap instead of having to get off and then fight,
I
the
see.
Hydra
Yeah,
or whatever.
that would actually be a really good mastery, because there's like a lot of situations where you're like, oh, I have to go up a cliff now and I'm on a raptor, but there's mobs nearby.
Exactly.
Do I kill them?
Yeah.
Or do I try to like avoid them?
Exactly. The thing to me, though, why I think Path of Fire is pretty muddy with that, and it's the same with like forged traps and stuff when you're in areas and you just get knocked off because of their health. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like it feels really, really, really frustrating and lame and bad to get knocked off your mount and be stuck in combat before you can get on the next one. It's not actually a
Yeah.
fun interaction of the expansion at all. And
I don't understand why they added that. That's such a weird thing, right? Like I don't know.
It sounds like on paper it might be good, but in experiencing it over a year now, I can pretty safely say it's not really. It doesn't really gel to me. I don't know. So if they add as a mastery, say, oh, you can bypass it now, I think it would lay bare to all players, casual,
because there's
veteran
like
alike.
balancing issue there as well.
Yeah.
If you don't get knocked
It would
off,
just reveal
but
to
if
everyone
it's
how
like
bad it
on a
is.
cooldown because it's on a mastery, then sure, it's balanced somewhat.
Does the evade mastery like dodge all the traps, or is it only some of them?
It does all of it.
Okay.
As
Yeah,
long
so
as
there
you
is-
evade through it. Yeah.
And that's like a big part of the skimmer as well, right? You know, it's not the fastest, but it's got a really goddamn good, active
The master,
ability.
yeah.
And the
The one
mastery,
thing-
yeah, you trigger, you just hold evade forever.
The one thing about the instant mount swap is like, how do you make it smooth? Because like you have a lot of mounts to swap to, right? So how are you gonna have a utility skill that swaps to one that you want, right? Out of all of the mounts.
Yeah, that's a good question. How would you do that? It would have to
Like,
be like a bundle. or
maybe just give you a bundle might be a thing, but I was thinking of just like a grace period where the animation would just kind of roll over. But I don't know. It's maybe that's a bit too much because I feel like a lot of the masteries here are just kind of a little visual effect that just it does a little extra thing that we already.
And here's
I
the
don't
other
know, I
thing,
don't
though,
know,
right?
maybe.
Like, as fun as that is, it's quality of an elite that gives you a bit of quality of life. Is that really an elite? I don't know. And it doesn't really tie to Aurene.
It's probably going to be a lot of a bigger deal than that, right? At least when it comes to
Yeah.
the story.
I don't know where they would fit in the elite though, because either they'll give 7 episodes, or there's going to be 2 masteries and 1 in the finale, or is the 6th episode of the finale? I don't know.
I would
I
think
guess
so.
everyone's guessing. Yeah,
Maybe there is no elite.
maybe there is no elite. Like I feel like the elite is just kind of out of scope in a way because it's supposed to be an elite. It's supposed to be like this big massive thing.
Could always
But
add it in.
how do you
expansion.
make that for
Or actually, the expansion would just be not mounts, wouldn't it? It would be just a completely new thing, underwater mounts.
We're kind of on the edge of a really, really interesting topic here, right? So I'm wondering what you guys think about this. Deroir basically just said it. We don't know. For the longest time with Guild Wars, right? And I've thought this is amazing. We've had a clear sense of what's going on. We're in a season. There'll be X number of episodes. Then we get an expansion, a season, X number of episodes. That leapfrogging idea seemed to be established. It's all pretty good. You have a rough sense of when various mechanics get added, like a new elite specializations with expansions, blah, blah, blah. But a really interesting thing is on the horizon at the moment, which is when we pass this next episode. We know that there's another season coming, but we don't know when. It's all so weird and like hazy, and there's so little sense of the future of the game. Do you guys have any thoughts about that? Because I think that's a crazy thing, to be honest.
So you mean like
all goes back to the anniversary. The
it
comments
annoys me on a daily basis.
Is it piss you off? Does it?
Yeah, it does, because I've always gone off of the assumption. Like when I play the game, in a lot of ways, it's for I play the game modes that kind of boost whatever I see is in the future or in the near future. I'm kind of working towards all the goals. I have no idea what's happening, like none whatsoever, and it leaves me just kind of blank in a lot of ways. I don't know really what to do, what to be expecting, I unironically feel like it's pissing me off on a daily basis.
would you like to know what's gonna happen?
Oh, I'd love to know.
But
yeah, it's gonna be a lot of time before that happens, I guess.
Sorry, was that an offer
Probably.
there and a suggestion that you're in the know?
Oh no!
It sounded like it.
It wasn't like that.
Well,
I was just
like,
pointing out,
Frosty
just saying.
loses
Arena
partnership
could
now.
probably say something, right? Anything.
I don't know, but that's the thing. Like we're all assuming that the next, last season, they said this is the penultimate episode, right? At the 5th episode before, they said this is the penultimate episode. and we're nearing an end. We kind of knew what was happening there.
Yeah, I
This
remember.
time around, we hit the wall. We punched Kralkatorg in the face, and now we don't know. Even if that was technically the season finale, we technically don't know. No one said anything. No one. We have no idea.
Yeah, and it's coupled with these vague assurances from the devs and this
Yeah.
general narrative that Living World can do everything expansions can. That's a scary thought to me that they're trying to convince us to be happy with just Living World.
Mhm.
I don't, and what could have caused that? At the studio, because the way I read it, right, is an expansion is way later than we'd expect. That's what I read it as, right, and it's kind of a way to pave over this.
What actually is the difference between expansion and Living World at this point? Because we've seen Kralkatorg basically in both an expansion and a Living World now. So
Well, story-wise, I argue there is no difference anymore. We've seen
No.
big narrative moments in Living World ever since Flashpoint, right? You can't make that argument. But game mechanics, elite specs, you can argue we're getting mounts in this season, and that's fine. But the infrastructure to seat mounts within, that was a big feature that was built in an expansion. So I think if there were only going to be any large architectural changes and massive profession-oriented changes like new elite specs, that has to be expansion territory, right? I
mean, isn't that also feature pack territory? Come back
I
with
guess,
those
yeah, it's
alongside them.
Yeah, but we never saw a feature. Well, there were only 2 feature packs, and none of them got anywhere near that, did they? Really, elite specializations and stuff. Well, actually, the specialization architecture was dropped in pre-hot, wasn't it?
Yeah. It
Mhm.
was. I
That
remember
was
for
kind of
PvP.
like a
Right,
flame.
the
But it was
Turned all the
pre-HOT
traits, yeah.
specializations.
Yeah, but just because it was released just before the expansion and not build with it, doesn't mean it wasn't developed in tandem with expansion mindsets and stuff. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
expansions are still there to do big stuff, right? Like a new playable race and things. You need an expansion for that, don't you?
Do
We're
you
gonna get
think
that
that?
in Living World.
Do you think that they they're not so keen on the new expansion because POF did badly in comparison to HOT or something?
I do wonder about that. I wonder about sales, and I wonder compared to Gem Store, just suppose that a Living World release is real, and with the Gem Store initiatives and stuff they do with the Black is basically monetarily fine for
Yeah.
sustaining the game and the population. Now the devs might like the idea of expansions and be like us the players, but anyone calling the shots financially over the studio and stuff, they're probably going to think, why are we still working on this? Why are we still doing expansions and doing all this marketing stuff? Screw it. And so there's an ease in process, and that's where we are. That's the murky, scary kind of. That's what today is. Well, we just don't know what's on the future.
And we just gotten to the point where Arena is basically just driven by the money men entirely. Or...
Well,
that's the scary thought, right?
We'll see what their direction is. Here's the other thing, right? If next episode, I'm a big fan that next episode is going to be the Blood Legion Homelands for X, Y, and Z reason. But here's the thing: if we're going there, it's kind of like going to a new region.
Yeah.
We'll see how well Living World does that. Path of Fire was awesome at showing the desert because, there was loads of new types of enemies. Most of the assets you were exploring were different. They had better post-processing. They had all this stuff. It felt new and fresh, right? Just like the jungle and Verdant Brick felt new.
The reason that is because of the process of doing it, right? Because how Living World is designed is by a separate team, but a expansion is done by all the teams together. I would assume, right? So there's more a cohesiveness to it. So maybe that is the difference between an expansion and a Living World episode. Is that kind of
I think to a certain degree, the only difference I really see between an expansion and the living story is just the quantity, the sheer quantity. We've gotten a mount in the living story, sure, but in the expansion we got 5, and we got a map in the living story, sure, but in the expansion we got 5. It's it's basically just multiply everything that we can get in the living story by X number of extra teams that are working on the expansion. I agree with you that yes, there's a chance for new races and whatnot, but is that really all that likely? I don't know.
Well, let me hit that point just a second ago and see what you think about this. Right, you say it's just quantity. What I'm trying to get at with the Blood Legion Homelands thing is, let's say we go there. If it's in Living Worlds, I would be way more cynical that they can have enough new assets and stuff to really pay justice to that region of the world. If you look at this most recent season, if you look at Istan and the Sandswept Isles and pretty much everywhere we've gone, it's basically all the same kind of feeling assets and stuff that we saw in the expansion itself repurposed, right? There's not been any really, really new feeling areas we've gone to. Even here in Thunderhead Keep, we see that we've Peaks, sorry, is borrowing a lot of pre-existing Shiver Peaks assets. They obviously do build new stuff and create heaps of new stuff, but I feel like, you know, an expansion is a much clearer step up and a step into the alien and with like a wide variety of new stuff, right? Do you get what I mean? Like, and
Yeah, I
so
agree.
that's what I'm trying to say. If episode 6, Blood Legion Homelands, if we go there, will it be different enough? And if the answer ends up no, then I purport that's an argument for expansions, right? That's something expansions can do that no one else can.
I've seen your video where you argue for the Blood Legion Homelands. You've got a really good point. I personally I think it's a little bit too north and it's too far out of the scope of the desert region. I personally think it's just going to be one of the adjacent areas to the desert region. But that's because I believe the Blood Legion Homelands is basically a story in itself.
Yeah,
Like
I think
you can go an entire season just up there telling a story about
or expansion,
whatever, yeah, or an expansion telling a story about whatever is up there. I think it's too far out of the scope. Like you were mentioning assets and whatnot. The other day when they had the Fractal live stream, the dev chat Fractal live stream, they were talking about all the assets that they had available for creating this tropical island that really didn't. I mean, they wanted it to be not any culture or whatnot that we've seen in the game before. So one of the environment artists, or the environment artist, I forget her name now. Sorry, I think it was Tracy. Was talking about, like, she didn't want all of the entire puzzle to look like the dwarven structures, but that was what they had available for, like, walls and whatnot. And so they actually had to go and get that, like, statue, the one that opens up its mouth and whatnot. That's a whole new asset to the game that they had to, like, file for getting made, and they don't really have the biggest scope for making new assets to go to new areas unless it's, well, yeah, as you said, with an expansion. I just don't think so. And I think
so you come around a bit now. Then you think that there is a good reason maybe we should still have expansions.
Oh, I'd love to have an expansion.
I think everybody here would love to have expansion.
I mean, I'm all for expansion. Give expansion now, please. Yeah. But I just don't know if it's happening. I think that's kind of the thing.
Expansion is, of course, the marketing side, right? They're not getting as much money. So how do we make expansions more profitable is the question.
I mean, I feel like they would still make more money from expansions. I just feel like PUF wasn't as much of a success as it should have been, right? No. I don't think they delivered well on that, but
that's Guild Wars 2 in a nutshell. That line, not as much of a success.
Well, I mean, I think HOT did a lot better, even though I think HOT had a lot of issues as well, right? I mean,
oh, yeah,
I don't know.
A different kettle of them. I think my perfect expansion is kind of the middle ground between the two.
Yeah, definitely. But I don't think we're gonna get it towards that, because, like, I feel like we had a lot of other developers working on HOT that we might not have anymore, or at least they had a different sort of mindset. Because if you look at the open world in HOT and compare it to POF, I mean, POF feels like kind of a joke, doesn't it? Because, like, you go around in HOT and the mobs, I mean, there's. I wouldn't say it's more immersive. I think they're very much on the same level on that. But things are much more hard on HOT. I don't think we're ever going to get anything towards that.
Well, that's because right when Heart of Thorns came out, there was a multitude of complaints, and it kept on for months and months on end.
Yeah. I know.
POF is basically
that's why we're not going to get it.
The reaction to all of the complaints from the people that were just kind of misled at the time, in my opinion. About what they wanted the game to be.
Well, yeah, okay, so this is a really cool topic, right? How much should audience feedback affect design? Because Path of Fire is, in so many ways, the way that how much you're incentivized to do metas and events that are stuck to synchronized world timers and all that kind of stuff. It is the child of feedback that was very delicately and listened to from Heart of Thorns. That's why Path of Fire is where it is, and any problems that are now laid bare is because of listening to community feedback rather than developer vision, dare I say. I mean, what are
Yeah.
the pros and cons there? I would just be very clear. I'm super cynical that anyone knows what the hell they're talking about, and I like, and I appreciate how ridiculous that is to say in the position we are on a podcast like this. But I kind of just, I feel like developer vision is king in a lot of ways, and Path of Fire is like my greatest case study for that. Don't you think?
I mean,
I completely agree.
they responded to the feedback by nerfing some of the like meta events, at least in HOT, right? I mean, they can just kind of respond to it reactively rather than just making a whole new expansion that's like fully casual or whatever, right?
But
So you
seemingly,
argue. Sorry.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, so your argument is that they essentially don't learn any lesson from Heart of Thorns. They just do Heart of Thorns again and then nerf again later. It's probably
Not the same, but like not as radical as this. Like this was even the metas. I mean, people like doing the HOT. What's going on in POF? You know, there's the pinata, I guess.
yeah, the casino. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
No. There's a meta event in every map. Literally
but-
every map in
Yeah,
Path of Fire,
people-
but none of them really have any value because all of them are either on weird, odd non-timers or what are they called? Map wide timers, not server timers. There's no real structure to them, and the reward scheme is rip.
Yeah, I mean the rewards is the main thing. We had the Istan nerf recently, and I was wondering if you guys had any opinions about one meta in the game you'd love to be buffed.
One meta in the game. I'd love
for me, it would definitely be a POF one. I'd probably go Desolation.
It's either Desolation, the tormented one, the tormented forge there, or the Serpent's Ire. It's one of the two. I'd love for those to be revisited. I think just in general, I'd love the Path of Fire events to be revisited to accommodate much more for Funerary Incense.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you could make the new Path of Fire like meta events more relevant by making like the new second tier legendaries more obtainable by like giving them a currency that you obtain. Like
they seem to have completely forgotten about the value of legendaries and when Path of Fire came out, and they were just rolling with the system they already had without expanding on it. And so they kept on going with Gen 2 legendaries requiring amalgamated gemstones without Path of Fire giving a single amalgamated gemstone. Yeah. And the Funerary Incenses, which is the alternative, are like hard capped on a daily basis.
This is interesting. Do you think if they got all? Do you think if they got all of the everything's exactly the same, but they got all of the Gen 2 legendaries out with HOT, and we were on Gen 3 for POF, and they were pure POF rewards? Do you think we'd feel differently about the metas?
Yeah,
because it could be.
They'd have to also change your acquisition method.
If the metas gave Funerary Incenses, and the Funerary Incenses were as they are now, but then used for Gen 3 legendaries, yeah, definitely, we'd be all over those.
Do you think
it doesn't even have to be Gen 3 legendaries. All they really had to do was like add a single or two recraftable what are they called? Legendary trinkets for Funerary Instances exclusively. That's it.
Well, the problem here though is the problem is that they can't tie the Gen 2 stuff to POF because
that's what
but they can make some new. Hey.
Yeah, that's why I say, Inks just said in chat they could barely do Gen 2. It's true. We're living in Cloud Cuckoo land. But it's interesting how just a completely abstract, different story, really, has affected how we feel about Path of Fire metas in a weird way. That was kind of what I was trying to drive at.
I think Gen 3 is it's never going to happen. That's for one. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think there's an argument to be made for trinkets of some kind. Those can have very easily producible effects, like just an aura or whatnot, like Aurora, or it can just be a very subtle non-effect, but it's recraftable. Like you can easily do a cop-out version of a legendary like that without going Gen 3 legendary weapons.
Another cop-out sorry, I don't mean to talk too much. People can interrupt me if need be. But another cop-out legendary I thought would be easy, and they could do with future expansions. If mounts had been implemented a little bit different in that they had itemization with them, like saddles and foods and stuff, you could have had legendary saddles and stuff like that. You can, if the next expansion has fishing, give us legendary fishing rods if that so behooves. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy to construct new stuff.
There's a
Yeah,
big hole in the whole reward system with Path of Fire, in that all of the rewards that we were screaming for, which was mounts, it all just got monetized. Like it was never put into the game ever. Even the legendary back pieces all turned into gliders. So there's that. I mean, but mounts have never seen anything acquirable through the game except for the base skin, I guess.
Well, they have. This goes into deficiencies with the mastery system, but you can feed mounts by doing tasks and giving them treats for extra experience, which should help you bond with them so you learn their new abilities and stuff. But that's all weighed down because of the mastery system being a bit rubbish. But there was a little bit. I don't think it's fair to say it was all monetized. But I mean, mostly, yeah, let's be real.
But yeah, the vast majority.
I mean, would they want to even put out skins that you can gain in the game at this point?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I think
they money.
I was arguing. And I'm sorry if I bring this up for anyone who's heard it before, but I was arguing on Tea Time at one point that I think one of the reasons why raids have kind of failed in a way is because it wasn't monetizable, and the initial monetization model kind of failed for ArenaNet. All the minis and glider skins and whatnot that they were putting on, it just kind of fell flat, and so it wasn't feasible for them to continue with it because it wasn't monetizable. I think they've found the biggest cash cow now with mounts, and I don't think that they're going to go back on that, because the moment that they go back on that and add something to the game with mounts, mount skins, is the moment that they risk potentially losing the cash cow. And I feel like that's an odd perspective.
Do you feel like they're pressured to make money out of every skin that they make, essentially? Because, like, say, just armor skins or whatever, they just want to put it all in Gemstore because they gain nothing out of it otherwise. I mean, they put out some things with the Living Story, at least. Like the Requiem armor, I think it was.
Yeah, they do a lot of it, actually.
Well, a lot is arguable, but...
Well, I say that as a comparison to the past.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha, yeah. We got the exalted shoulders now with the celestial cape. What do you guys think of that? Apropos armor skins and whatnot.
Yeah, those are pretty interesting because they're kind of like a new, like, that's kind of like the topic, right? It's pushing the boundaries of like the wardrobe, right? Because they're a shoulder skin, but they're also kind of like a back piece. So it's like if you have the new PvP chest piece that they came out with and the new exalted shoulders, you kind of have like extra tentacles, which
double wings,
kind of funny, but also like just the fact that it's a back piece that kind of hangs off your back and looks kind of like a cape. It feels like we're going in a direction that maybe can gain ArenaNet a little bit of money, you know.
So sorry, but in plain English, what are you saying? You think capes are gonna come because of the exalted backpack?
It looks like it. The physics are there. If they actually, it genuinely looks like a celestial back piece. Like it's just kind of flopping around with its own physics.
Didn't Vallun just say that it still clips through the body though? So there's.
Oh yeah, it does. Really... But does anyone? Okay, 2019. Does anyone care about clipping anymore on armor?
I never did. Not
really.
Everything clips.
Everything in this game clips. Nobody gives a shit.
But it would probably be particularly unimmersive with a cape. I mean, I don't know how bad it would be, but I have a feeling it would be really bad. Right? It would go through your body like back and forth.
The original game had some cape clipping, and it was really horrendous looking.
I mean,
the problem is with the problem with the whole cape discussion, right, is the devs haven't actually talked about it that often. But the quotes that we're left with are essentially this argument of, it's clipping and we're too worried about that and stuff. And, you know, we've just sort of stewed on that for years and years and years. The clipping is a problem. It's been a problem even since the game came out. I think it's ludicrous to ask an MMO not to have clipping. Come on, with 5 different distinct races with the sizes that they have them. You're having a laugh if you think there's not going to be clipping. But there is a degree of severity.
If they came out with like an outfit that had a cape on it, because outfits are kind of like predetermined, so like they can just design them.
I don't think that's the issue. Yeah. I don't think they think like, okay, the cape is clipping with armor. I think they think that the cape is clipping with the player character model. I don't think it's the armor.
So that's where this actually doesn't start with the exalted shoulders, does it? There was another cloth item that came in the game recently. Can anyone remember what it was? It was
The
either a
was it the
gemstone.
Sunspear thing, Gemstore, Sunspear
Yeah, that was it.
outfit,
Oh
something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
It was the heroic edition of Path of Fire gave you that outfit, the Sunspear outfit, didn't it? And they
Yeah.
went back and updated the cloth texture physics on it in a random patch, maybe about a month
Yeah, they
ago.
did
Or
that to the scarf as well, like the new.
yeah, it was when
scarf.
the scarf came out. Yeah, so this is all the same new tech essentially, and that's what reignites the cape discussion as much as the exalted shoulders, right? Because the idea is they actually have some new cloth rendering backbone that they could
That
put capes
sounds
onto.
that sounds a lot more likely than I don't know. The exalted shoulders. I don't think like they float around, but they have nothing else to do with capes, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
isn't
the
it the
scarf
same
is probably
effect as
more
well?
telling.
Yeah.
Isn't it literally the same effect we've already seen on Exalted, like armors and stuff since HOT? I
I
appreciate
think
we
so.
haven't got players.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It
that's
looks like
not a new
Well,
push.
I think it's actually. Correct me if I'm wrong, but comparing the two, there's a lot more detail on the exalted one, the exalted model, than there is on the shoulder piece.
Oh
I
yeah.
think it's got something to do with how they want it to be like somewhat interactive, so it just doesn't flow around randomly like it does for the exalted, right? Because they're kind of static, right? They can predict how they're gonna move pretty easily and all that.
Yeah.
But I mean, if the question is simply, I mean, that's good footage right there, Vallun. To be honest, I really like
Yeah,
that.
I'm looking at that.
Uh, if the question is, would I like a cape? It's a funny one because for a long time I really, really cared about it, but it was more just as a nostalgia bomb to me and the unification of the two games. Because a huge part of the aesthetic of a player character in Guild Wars 1 was that cape. Everyone had capes. That was why they were significant, because it was a big part of like the game's visual identity that so many characters had capes. If they added it to Guild Wars 2 now, with so many different skins available and so many years built up of people finding different outfits and looks and styles, even if they flooded the market with really easy to access capes or something, gave it its own slot and stuff, I don't think the main reason I was always excited about capes would end up coming true, which is the unification of the aesthetics, because only some people would wear it in the end. So capes in and of themselves I'm not actually that excited about, I have to be honest.
Not really.
It's more just where they sit in the franchise.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's more the potential for it to be an expandable feature. Like
Yeah.
if capes actually were a new thing, not just another skin as a back piece. I think that's where it excites me, as is like the seventh piece of armor or trinket armor or whatever.
A new slot.
Yeah,
You know
exactly.
what? If they did do capes, I'm telling you, the best way that they should do capes is they should tie it in. We already have some gear that's guild gear, and it puts your guild icon on, right? We already have that. They should, if they do capes, it has to start as an addition. There needs to be like new guild missions and a refinement to guild systems.
Yeah.
And cape is a new reward coming out of the back of those, so that you can have your guild emblem on the back of it. That's where the inception should be. And after that, do a legendary one or something if you want. But that's what I'd want most.
Guild missions. That's
And
pretty.
now we're getting it. Yeah, guild missions and guild features. Now we're getting into fantasy land,
The
unfortunately.
boundaries of
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually used to do guild missions a very, very long time ago. I've never done them since. I don't know. You kind of just skimmed through them, You saw all of them, and that's it. It was only really
You
guild
did the
sort of
guild
thing where
puzzles
you would.
though, right? Those were kind of interesting.
I mean,
until
they're
you
nice.
Figured out how
They're
to do
nice,
them.
but you just go through them, and once you've seen them, it's like you don't really want to do them again, do you? It's kind of just farming. At that
Yeah.
point, it's just like socializing, right?
You want the commendations and you want to say hi to your mates once a week.
Yeah, exactly. Commendations.
Well, guild missions can be good. They just need to have a little bit more of that fractal style emergence, and like the bounties need to be tuned up for contemporary balance and stuff. I remember when bounties first came out, I remember Don Tane was still an active YouTuber at that time, and he did a video where he got his whole guild killing them, and no one knew how hard they were or where they were, and he had like a guild of like 200 people rushing around the whole world trying to find it at the time. Like, it was exciting to people, I think updates to guild missions can tap into that same excitement. It just needs TLC. Puzzles, I don't know, because they're pretty linear. How much can you really change a puzzle? They're exciting the first time, but not so much subsequent. So I don't. But some of those other things, I don't know. There's something really good there, and holding on to communities and giving things for guilds to do is super important in this game. Like, so important. Like putting blood out of a stone, trying to find meaningful reasons for PvEers to stay.
Player-made content is kind of like what keeps people in the game.
Socializing is very good. Just pushing people to do more of that stuff. It's very. They haven't done much of that recently. That would be really nice to see. Also, if anybody has not done like any of the guild missions, you should totally try it. Okay, they're actually not bad to do for the first time. They're
Yeah.
pretty good content.
I actually feel like, apropos some of the puzzles, I feel like some of the puzzles would be fantastic if they were scaled down to 5 men and made as fractals, because they've got a pretty good linear progression through. Take, for example, the Radasum one, or the one in Brisbane, where you're going through this puzzle and you got to work to click the right buttons all the way through this puzzle and kind of work as a team. But you don't need 30 people. You need like 4. So if you actually scale the event to be a 5-man thing and put a boss at the end, I actually think that would be really cool.
Yeah, that would bring them into being used a lot and be pretty easy.
Yeah.
Would you then
Just
cut the
reuse
open world
that.
equivalent?
Well, probably, yeah. But I don't know. I feel like cutting any content at this point is just kind of...
Having a boss at the end, even like at the end of the guild mission, would be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
or that. Just
yeah.
a
Well, I
big
do think
old
that
boss.
there is one aspect of guild puzzles that you couldn't recreate in fractals. I do think they're really beautiful, like in terms of the spectacle. The maze at the end of the Ratsum
Yeah.
one. That's if you're one of those guys, it's not needed. Everyone knows how to do it, right? So it's fine. But if you're one of the guys that climbs up the stairs and you look at the overview of the maze and you see like so many players flooding around and the lights moving and stuff, that is actually there's a spectacle to that you can't actually recreate at a 5-man scale, I think. And the same
That's
as
true.
in Ascalon, there's the 4-leveled thing to get through the gate. You got to stand on the pressure pads to turn the wheels, to stop the poison, to get the stuff for the to blow everything. You've got a whole group a Zerg essentially doing multiple things at once. I do like that about them, so maybe they've got some value on their own, because I don't think you can recreate that anywhere else. But I don't know. I can't remember the last time I did a puzzle. I really can't.
What do you think about the new fractal, Deroir?
I like it. It's a little spammy at the end, but otherwise I really like it. It's
It feels like it's basically another Deep Stone. Like structurally, it's like a puzzle event and then like a boss event.
I think one of my favorite bits is actually the little puzzle thing where you got to throw the chest between players. I feel like there's a lot of optimization to do there, but it's all about it's a new way of working together with your team that we don't really get in any other fractal. You get to throw this little thing between everyone.
I was about to say Ara, but that's not a fractal.
Yeah, true. It's like Ara is a second option for that exactly or that exact experience. But yeah, and slippery slobbling. But we don't really have that in fractals. I don't know. I had this great moment the other day where I was hugging the fractal. I was just hugging tier 4 fractals, and one of the guys said, "I'm still missing the got to get through the puzzle without touching any of the eyes." And with a pug first try, we ran through really speedily and really effectively through that maze and got the achievement for them. It was super exciting. Like it's been a long time since I've been just excited over a little achievement that I already had, just because it was about the teamwork. It was about getting that experience there.
So apparently they mentioned on a live stream, I'd missed this, that there's Karka hatchlings in there. I didn't see those.
There's just a single one. It's an Easter egg hiding in a shipwreck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's at the end, the last event with the ship where you just kill the bosses and
you have to like
the
look at a certain angle and then you can see inside the ship at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know what the significance of it is, but it's there.
Apparently the map designer or visual artist there did ask the lore team if it was all right, if it was potential bad thing to put it in, but seemingly it was okayed, so it's in there.
Didn't they say somewhere that it's not tied to the story though?
No, I mean I think it's just more of a Karkas are sea creatures, and it's a shipwreck, and it's got a Karka hatchling. I mean I don't think it's all that deep.
It's the
sea
Karka
dragon
infestation.
Hey.
The first Kark.
The origin of the Karka infestation. The precursors.
The little Karka, it followed Wayand all the way to Lion's Arch, and it was the one that actually attacked Lion's Arch in the end there.
It just reminds me of
the ancient Karka.
when Lion's Arch was being rebuilt, there was that transitionary version of LA. There was a hidden Karka on that map as well. That was like one of the first Easter egg Karka hatchlings. It was like inside a
Yeah.
girder, and it just made me think of that. I think they're just fun to hide in maps, to be honest.
Oh, they are. It's always great.
So,
There's another Easter egg apparently that
on the
I
new
have
map?
not found. Yeah, on the new map.
Yeah. Is it the yellow snow?
No. There's no on the Siren's Reef. The
okay.
apparently this is in every single one of this map artist's map because she mentioned it on the dev chat. There's a little bird. What was it? It's a very particular bird. I forget the name of it. Someone in chat will correct me in a second. It's just a miniature model of a bird that's non-interactable. That's in every single one of those maps that she's made. Kind of like the coin that has been spotted in different maps by who was that put the little
Josh
discover
Foreman did
coin.
that, I think.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like her mark.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like a quail. Thank you, Satri. You got it. A little quail. That was the word.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's on Siren's Reef, and apparently also in the raid and the Cormier's library.
Really?
I have not
There's one
found
in the
any of-
library.
Yeah, she made all 3 of those maps.
those are
Have
all really
people
good
found
maps
them?
too.
Yeah, I haven't found those.
I'm wondering, like, if they're within the bounds of the map or if they're out bounds. Like, how does it work?
It can be anything. Sometimes the coin has just kind of been hidden like way off as an Easter egg in like a corner that was only found years after the fact.
Yeah.
So
okay.
it can be anywhere. Pass. I gotta go look for it at some
Anywhere
point.
is not safe from Frosty. He will find it. He can go
Yeah.
out of bounds.
Find a quail. If you find a quail, you'll probably be the first person to find the quail. Because I've seen no one posting about this quail anywhere. I have not seen the model. I don't even know what to look for.
I wonder how small it is.
Well, a quail is a small bird, so
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, we're going off the deep end here.
Do you want to talk about the Easter egg you found, Frosty, in the new map?
The what? Oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, I think people went over it on Reddit already pretty well. It's like just I don't know what it was. It was just like letters in yellow on the snow. That's it. That's it. Like
What, someone's peed
outside
on the
of the bounds
snow?
of the map.
Yeah.
His name is Dan.
I mean, I think that was the joke, right?
He
I
spelled
don't
his
know.
name Dan in yellow on the snow.
Really? That's hilarious.
But it's
Wow.
like way off the map. You can only get there by like breaking out with the griffin, which is pretty easy to do, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not too hard in the new map. It's like they just introduced this new mastery, and there's a mastery point up in like inside a cave and a little jumping thingy, and then right next to the mastery point, there's this little hole in the wall. You
They
can
closed
just use the
it.
mastery.
They closed it.
They did it.
Yeah, in the latest
There's
patch,
another way to go
it
now.
crushed me. It crushed me because
Did?
yeah. I've been AFKing on the top of the mountain right above it. It was
I mean,
so.
you can still do it, but it's a lot harder.
I don't know any other way out. I knew 2, and they're both closed now.
The first waypoint where you get to, like when you do the story, right? Inside the furnace thingy, right? You can kind of griffin up that forever, and then you just go like through the roof, right? It's hard to explain. It's just in that furnace area.
Well, fair enough.
But it's a lot more annoying, so I'm actually sad that got fixed, because that mountain was really nice, actually. It was almost like it was intended. Do you think they ever intend people to find some of these holes in the map and break out of them?
I think sometimes.
Yeah.
I think sometimes they'll just leave it for shits and giggles. Other times it's
Leave
just
a world hole. There's no way they've ever deliberately left a world hole for someone to escape. How can you justify that? Where? When?
They
could
usually tend to
justify
try
it.
to prevent that, but if they just leave it open, then it's like whatever, right?
Like with the one that Deroir said was closed right next to the mastery point, you could get through that with only using the mastery, and then after that you could only get up from that hole by using the mastery. I think very few people would try to do that. So I feel like if they would do that, the way they would justify it is the normal player is not going to have their immersion broken because they're never going to like try to do this, right? They won't, go out of their way to do this. But yeah.
But right beside that hole, there is a
Yeah.
chest as part of an achievement.
Oh yeah,
like,
there is. I forgot about that.
It's like you're looking at the chest, and then like just a
On the
blink
right side
to
of the
a
wall.
blink to the right. There's a giant hole in the wall.
Yeah, I honestly, I think any holes you find is just ineptitude. It's just crunch,
Yeah.
and it's just they've got to close. I don't think that they do
Probably.
it.
There's also the Dragon Ball one. You know how there's like on the roof there's two of these circular things that are like kind of broken, so you can go through them.
Oh, have you
So
played Dragon Ball this year? I love the new Frost thing that you can like do
that
like
is
double
so
jump.
good. That's why you can break them up. Yeah, that's why you
Oh,
can break it. Yeah.
dude, I love that thing. Like, Dragon Ball's so much like kiting away from people. So like, if you precast the 3, jump over the edge, and then it gives you the jolt, you can about face and get back on and stuff. It's so awesome, man. I love that thing.
Yeah, you can go around pillars and stuff. That skill is really good, but I think Dragon Ball is just inherently annoying because you can't really prevent people from just spamming one you to death. So it's
Yeah,
a
it
bit
is
annoying.
tricky. I do maintain though, Dragon Ball is the most balanced thing that's ever been in Guild Wars 2.
I
The
mean,
ultimate
right.
balance.
If you had all the
Probably
skills
right.
at the very start, yes, I would agree. But you don't. I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
think the
balanced out.
arcade style pickup system where you're counting respawn timers for like when stealth comes up and when stuff. I reckon that genuinely really
You can
good
get
format.
spawn camp pretty hard though. Like
Yeah, it's very snowbally. That's true.
If they
I mean, the
fix
map
that,
would be
maybe
better,
it'd
but-
be more balanced.
You can get out of that though if you stay in the safe spot for too long. It teleports you out.
What? Where does it put you when
It
it
doesn't
TPs you
teleport
out?
too far though.
I think there's
No, it's
5
like-
different spots it can put you on.
Yeah,
Really?
if you just
Yeah,
stay in
it's-
there, it ports you out.
Is that
It's on
really
the
like
side.
a solution though?
Say what?
You'd still be spawn camped if you get to that spot, right?
I mean, probably, but I mean, if you actually end up in a situation where you're getting spawn camped and can't really get out, even with
They
when
need like
regrouping,
alternate exits.
I mean,
I tell a lie. The most balanced thing they ever did was clearly Aspect Arena. I don't know.
Okay, bro.
Reaper's
Wait.
Rumble. Reaper's Rumble was really bad.
it was.
But it came back and
horrible.
I'm so happy.
I never tried it. I was so disappointed because everyone was
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, Reaper's Rumble," and I get in. Just the worst.
Yeah, it was not good. It was not
Oh,
good. I mean, I
It
have a
never
mental
was.
that yeah, it never was. That's the thing. And the devs probably knew that year in, year out. They were like, stop asking for it to come back. It's not
Yeah.
good. But they finally did it, and I eat my humble pie. It wasn't
The
very good.
vocal minority.
I gotta say one more thing about the ice skill. Okay, it's so good because I mean, the normal player probably wouldn't think of it. I mean, they probably wouldn't figure out how to use it properly. But that's what I love about it, right? Because there's the optimal way to use it where you precast it slightly before the jump, and then it gives you like a really good amount of height. And especially if you use it like with one of the jump pads, it's so good. It's so flexible. It needs to exist somewhere else in the game. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
that needs
it
to
made
exist.
me think of a mastery that's essentially just a double jump mastery. People talked about that before Heart of Thorns came out. It was like, no, that's ludicrous. That's ridiculous. Blah blah blah. But nowadays with mounts and stuff, you never know.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
basically what the Springer plus the new Mastery is, right?
Yeah, kind of like a double jump. What do you think of that as a
In-
component of an elite spec?
Double jump.
Yeah, like a minor is associated with an
I
elite
would
spec.
love that. I would love that, but that would be very very broken.
Just a thief
It
acrobat.
would be Ranger, wouldn't it? You'd
What, so
like
you jump
become
on
a
the
bunny
pet?
rabbit.
You become the bunny.
No, I like the idea that you jump on the pet jumps and then you jump off its back or something. But yeah, I think it's got to be like an Acro Plus style thing, which is weird because we already have Lotus on Daredevil, which is kind of like Acro.
I don't
Plus.
think it's gonna happen.
No, me
I
neither.
hope not, but I feel like that would. Oof.
That
There
could
actually
probably
was a
break
bug in the
fractals.
game before that allowed you to do a double jump.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's still some sort of bug. I don't know how it works exactly. It's like with some long casts and then some web swap names. So it's like before it used to be you use your auto attack. At least this worked on Sword. I don't know about other. You use your auto attack and then you dodge jump backwards and weapon swap midair, and then you would double jump in the air.
Double jump weirdly. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
you can do it with a was it warrior axe as well. It was weird.
Wow,
Yeah,
I never
but
knew
there's
about
a there's a few weird ways to double jump.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
a really good way. Dang it. But it was really inconsistent, I think, because I don't know. I feel like it had something to do with the server things because people tried to make macros for that in PvP and it never works out consistently. So yeah.
It's a bug, not turned feature, not like the
Yeah.
dodge jump feature. The boundaries of game design,
Do you
though.
guys want to move on to the next topic now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an hour.
Let's go. Boom.
Do you guys want to talk about the condition damage versus power damage?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm game for that.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so the basic premise around this is I'm actually going to link you guys a forum post which kind of fueled more of this discussion, but this is kind of an age-old topic where it says, Condi builds are easier, or, there's some kind of like stigma around people who play Condi builds because, it's easier to play, or it's somewhat like,
We're talking to PvP here, right? Just
yeah,
to make it...
we're gonna generally talk about PvP, but we can also talk about how like raid mechanics give you conditions instead of just flat damage as well. That can also be discussed if we get there as well. But yeah, so the basic argument is that Grimjack makes the post and he says that conditions aren't actually easier than power. It's just a misconception that power damage happens instantly and it has clear animations to it, and therefore it's easier to avoid it and it's easier to counterplay it. Whereas condition builds, it's kind of like more abstract, and like the animation that you get hit with the conditions is independent of the condition itself that kills you, so it's not as clear, and therefore it's harder for people to understand what's actually killing them. But if you actually learn what it is, you actually know like what is giving you the conditions. It's a clear animation, and if you just dodge that or counterplay that, then it's not actually that hard to go against. But my stance on this is that there sort of is like a difference between condition and power damage, whereas the original post is kind of like saying that they're the same. Like he compares the Axe 3 on Mesmer on Mirage to like Axe burst skill on Warrior, whereas like one is very clear, the other is very clear, but then like we don't complain when we get hit by the Axe on Warrior because you should have just dodged. But when we get hit by the Axe on Mirage, we kind of like say, oh well, Mirage is just he's just playing a condition build. So like where is the difference?
I feel like the example, I couldn't help myself from thinking example given in the poster. It's a matter of perspective in a sense, right? It's kind of unfair to compare them in that sense, because the reason why we're complaining about Axe, or the reason why people complain about Axe 3, I don't necessarily. I actually think it's a very visual skill. Sorry, it's very easy to dodge the Axe 3 on Mirage because it is so grand and flashy. But the reason why we complain about it is because you don't. A lot of people will feel the weight of their actions on a second by second basis, right? And when you're in PvP, so if you get hit instantaneously by an F1, you feel that instantaneously. You know what hit you. If you get hit by the Axe 3 on Mirage, you go on for a couple of seconds, not really caring too much about it, thinking that, oh right, I'll be all right. So you kind of go through this emotional roller coaster unless you really know what the repercussions are from getting hit by it. And so it turns into like a perspective of like a player perspective of what am I expecting to happen after this one skill hits me. Does this sentence even make sense in a
Yeah, I mean, we thought about this actually before, or when we thought about putting this topic on the podcast with Vallun, and I mean, I think that's I think the casuals definitely feel like that. Like the the people that don't bother learning like many classes, they just play like their few games in PvP, whatever. Have a bit of fun, right? Those people will have that issue, but I think there are a lot of people that know what the skills do, or at least vaguely know the repercussions of the skills, but they still have a bad time with them. I mean, X3 is in my opinion, a horrible example because it it target breaks. Okay, it can go behind you. It depends on like how far your camera is scrolled. It can be like Omega first person. You'll never see him coming. There's or the angles can be awkward. It's a bad comparison. And then there's also I feel like a lot of white people feel like Condis suck is because Mirage and Scourge. Let's just say like these are the two ones that people have complained the most about, right? The times that they were complained the most about, they were pretty instantaneous with their like condition application. So like the shades, I mean, I wouldn't say they were pretty much instant, but the thing with that was like they had almost an infinite supply of the skills that they had, right? So you could never really approach them. It would feel incredibly bad to go anywhere close to them because you knew that you would get fucked, right? And then Mirage is you have the shatters. The shatters are your main, or well, used to be your main damage. They're not anymore because now you have the clone spam. But I feel like that's why people hated those in specific. I don't know what's going on right now in PvP though. I've not played it that much.
This is just like the current meta right now. If Mirage gets nerfed, if Scourge gets nerfed, that doesn't matter. Like this has been an issue since probably the beginning of Guild Wars, right? People have always, well, maybe since the condition rework, right? Because you could only like put so many conditions
really
on people.
Yeah, condition rework, that was a big thing.
Right,
people
that really
hated
made
that.
conditions more powerful and kind of also made people like feel that they were less fair. And I think,
but that's the thing, right? Like the condition rework made them be on par with the power skills.
Exactly,
yeah, they weren't playable really before.
Yeah.
That was kind of the big thing. Or they were like weirdly gimmicky, like you play a power. Sorry.
Yeah, what I'm trying to get at is like, what is the actual difference between power and condition? And I'm gonna, first of all, I would say that it's that condition builds require only 2 stats to like deal their damage, whereas power rely on 3, right? Power, precision, and ferocity, and then condition damage and condition duration. So like a condition build can invest in more defensive stats to get the same kind of effect aggressively while also being kind of like more tanky. And someone, did you mute your mic, Frosty?
Yeah, it's a mute.
Oh, rip.
There we go. We're back. Is it fixed?
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Alright, nice.
Yeah, so like a power build is kind of like less sustainable, so it's kind of like more punishing to play it if you're running like a stat of say like Marauders, right? Versus Trailblazers, right? Marauders is a lot less sustain, but probably does the same amount of damage as Trailblazers. So that's.
But you don't have things like Trailblazers in PvP though. I mean, Wolver's World is another thing, but yeah. Do you think people have an issue with conditions in specific in Wolver's World?
Right now, the meta is actually Power Scourge, I think, but that has more to do.
Yeah,
with,
it is.
Isn't that more to do with like the nerfs to?
I think it's just the burstiness of it, and because Firebrand exists.
Well,
exactly. There's too much easy.
Last time I was roaming and just trying to 1v1 constantly in World vs. World, right before Path of Fire came out, Condi Chrono was horrendously busted because you could run pure dire, right? Condi damage, well, not pure dire, but you'd run, and then vitality and toughness, and it's exactly what Vallun's talking about. That thing was ludicrous in World vs. World. So I do think
yeah.
There is, regardless of meta or whatever, there is a baseline, inherent, fundamental difference between the two outputs there. I think is fair to point out. Just as like as a starting point, I think that there is a slight difference there.
Yeah, and I mean we saw it like in PvP with Condi Chrono during HOT. They they kind of deleted that one amulet. I don't even remember its name anymore, but there was one amulet that was busted on it. It was exactly that, I think. You know, it had the defensive stats and the condition stats.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name, but you guys probably remember what it was. So yeah,
Is
I don't
Wanderer
remember.
still in there? That was one of them that was kind of loaded.
Wanderers is still in there, but that's like it has very low toughness on it. It's not all that.
Mercenary. Someone say.
Mercenary, yeah, there we go. That's the one.
Oh,
Yeah.
but so what's the sticking point of the discussion? The raw difference between them? Because yeah, I would just say I'm in agreement with Deroir. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions amongst the community of how strong Condi is, and it's just because the crucial animations and moment of you messing up and not evading correctly is harder to discern when you're fighting Condi, because the key mess up hasn't manifested in your death until several seconds later. You get eviscerated, then you know, oh, I got eviscerated. Right, that's fair. That's immediate. It's apparent what's going on. If you tank, a ridiculous amount of shade stuff and walk out and then only die a few seconds later, if you've been standing in a Scourge's Elite for too long and then die a few seconds later, it is less immediately transparent and it feels less fair to people.
Right.
There's also quite a binary nature of counterplay when it comes to Condi, especially when you go to the competitive scenarios that doesn't exist for power pressure, which is cleanse, right? Like cleanse is something that actually has to be built in, and there's no guarantee it's built into your setup. So if you're a random, particularly casual player that doesn't really think in the terms of watching animations of what you're avoiding, there is the potential to have much worse matchups when Condi is in question than when power is in question, because there's a whole like facet of buildcraft that you may have not considered whatsoever, and then you just feel completely hopeless because you've rotated into the wrong matchup or whatever. And these are extra layers and extra dimensions that do not exist when it comes to power stuff. To me, I think. I mean, to an extent, they do with protection and whatnot. But does that make
It's
sense?
a hard one, right? It's a
Completely.
very hard one.
And it's
So-
also
I
like the
found
fact.
I found also one of the reasons, or one of the most likely scenarios that I find in PvP where people are going, oh, Scourge is too OP, nerf, or is when people stand in the elite, because it's not the it's not.
I mean-
it doesn't have the same tell as everything else. People are kind of getting conditioned to look away from all these red pulsing circles around it, that they kind of miss the golden sparkly sand all over the place all of a sudden, and they just stand in it and get fucking obliterated.
Scourge is a lot different now than it used to be. That's I think when I was talking about Scourge, I was mainly talking about back when everything was instant cast still, and
Yeah.
there was no wind up and stuff, and they actually killed you with the normal shade skills. But yeah.
Like the reality might not be that Condi is that egregious. It really might, but these are the reasons why those perceptions exist amongst the community, right? That's why it gets kind of a worse
Yeah,
rap.
but why
There's actually a pretty
does that perception exist?
Well, I think I tried to
Mm.
articulate that a second ago about how.
Well, I think maybe there's like an actual like objective issue with conditions that we might be able to come up with a solution to, and it's that like condition builds not only require you to think about the animation that you're dodging, but you also have to think about your UI and your condition bar, right? So when you're fighting a power build, all you really need to look at is your health bar and their animations. But when you're fighting a Condi build, you have to think, okay, I need to dodge his animations, and I need to make a decision of when I want to cleanse. So I have to be like constantly checking my conditions. Do I have 12 bleeds? Do I want to cleanse that, or do I want to wait till I get more confusion? And that's another issue, right? Like torment and confusion changes your playstyle, and it feels more like weight on you, and especially for like condition builds who run condition duration, they're debilitating conditions like cripple, chill, weakness. They're gonna last longer as well. So there's like not only they're doing damage, but they're also doing things that are preventing you from doing your thing. And while power builds also do conditions like that, like weakness and cripple, they don't have like the duration as well, because it's not just built into their spec.
That's interesting. We've seen the devs have tried implementing, in PvE at least, some stats that are like, this is clearly a power set, but it's got a bit of expertise on there. And sadly, they've never really found their place, I think, which is a shame, because I feel that's a whole niche of builds that the game still kind of lies untapped with. No one wants to build expertise unless they're also Condi damage at the same time, but maybe one day, right? That's a slight tangent, but yeah. I don't know
maybe
whether I
one day.
think the thing with conditions as well is okay, so what do you guys think about essentially the idea that Condis are too spammy, right? Because that's a whole other side of it as well, in that people feel like you can be much less intelligent as a Condi player as opposed to a power player who has to be that much more precise. Why does that exist? Because nothing we've said really addresses that facet of. Is that even true? First of all, does
I
anyone
don't
ever
think
thought
it's true because there are a lot of power builds that are just kind of very spammy. Like if you take, for example, like Revenant, you're just kind of like a lot of your attacks just do damage. Engineer has tons of damage. I think Soul Beasts have tons of damage on every ability, so like they just want to just keep pushing out damage. So I mean, the only difference I can see with Condis is that you kind of have to wait for cleanses to be out to really go in sometimes, but even then you don't really need to do that. So
so you think that's just totally false? Why do people feel that way then?
I mean, in the past, I think the power builds had a lot more of these like important skills, right? So you had a more like you had a few of the important skills that you wanted to dodge, right, or whatever, like something like that, right? I mean, it's less of that now, but then there's also like Revenant can't really dodge while doing that damage. Kind of needs to commit, while something like Mirage can just dodge while doing the damage.
Yeah, it's doing both the effects.
Yeah.
Or both the actions, sorry.
I mean, it doesn't do as much damage, but it still does quite a bit, right?
yeah, and it's kind of like that. The play style of condition is also kind of like you do your damage and then you can kind of just play safe while your damages are kind of taking out. But that's
like
is that really
power
like
has a lot
bad
of
balance?
I mean, power builds have like things like Shackling Wave, right? They're very high damage skills, and people know that. And on Condi builds, it's like every single one of your skills has conditions attached to it, more or less. So that's why it can feel pretty spammy, because just every skill can apply something.
So you
But
agree actually then that they are spammy?
Uh, maybe slightly more spammy, but I don't know. I feel like it's more got to do with what's in the Condi meta right now, rather than
As a rule of thumb, yeah.
yeah.
I think the spammy nature isn't. I mean, it's not inherently too bad because like applying a couple of conditions every hit isn't too bad. But if you immediately hit your cleanse the first time that you get bought by a few conditions, then you're out. Then the ticks will just keep going up. Like you don't really have a counterplay after you've used your one cleanse or whatever you have with you, right? And then it starts feeling spammy. It feels like it just keeps piling on and on and on without there being a counter to it. But I feel like most of the time it's because, well, bad play on the other part. Like you cleansed too early, you dodged this one instead of the other one. Like I mean, yeah, maybe
it's definitely a
par
learn
for
to
the
play
course.
issue is the issue, but is it more so difficult to play against conditions than to play against power is the real issue, because like it's not.
I don't know if it's difficult in that sense. I think it's just more a case of it's different. Power builds are a lot more in your face, like right in your face. It's the same with like I think one of my most hated skills in the entire game or abilities is the Scourge Scepter, right? Because there's no real good tell for it. Like when it hits me, like there's no projectile, there's nothing coming towards me, compared to like a sword swinging through to my face. It's very visual. It's very in my face. It's very easy to learn, even for new players in the PvP scene. But like they're just fundamentally different. I think it's it's a question of the mentality go into it.
What do you think about the condition of? I'm not sure if Confusion does this, but I know Blind has like this effect on your screen where like everything gets a little bit more dark around the outline, and it has like this very visual thing where you don't have to look at your bar; you just know it's on you, and to play around.
But we can't have something for everything.
Exactly. So like, how do we kind of like bridge the gap between a player who can't like process all of this information at once, while also like being able to play around. Oh, I need to cleanse now, or wait, I only have like one stack of torment, one cripple, and one bleed. Do I really need to cleanse that? No, I just see a ton of conditions on me. I don't really see how many stacks, and then they waste their cleanse because they think they have a lot of conditions on them without actually like knowing.
It's
I
funny
think
you
people would
say.
be more mad because they hate things like the blind thing. They like all right. They don't understand why they're getting all these conditions, and then they get all this blind and shit on the screen and with the confusion, and they just become more confused.
And
It doesn't really help.
days gives you a really
Yeah.
clear animation, but that's not like a condition. It's more like a effect.
Well, I think one side of this is maybe there's an assertion that's been made here, which is that Condi animations have a higher incidence of being more subtle than power ones. So Deroir's saying with the scepter, and I don't know whether that is true. I haven't thought about that enough. But the case here, I wouldn't actually say it's about the tell on torment as a function of the UI. I would say we go back to the scepter and we look at wind ups for those and we look at transparency on the skills themselves. If Feast of Corruption is a really massive corrupt as it is now, and Torment Bomb, maybe the original little jaw animation they had back when it was like a hybrid power thing from release needs a bit of a change, right? And maybe when they upgraded it with the recent change and now it's a whole new skill, maybe that was an opportunity to look at animations a bit more. Maybe that's it. I mean, there's a lot of really gross stuff out there. Like nobody plays or cares about Condi Ellie, but if that ever gets tuned to a point where it's good, there's some gross stuff in the game, like Signet of Fire. You want to talk terrible animations? That's like a 1200 range, like extra fast, no projectile, and ridiculous like burn splash that they keep buffing as well. It's AOE now. There's a lot of stuff out there, and I don't know whether it's just because Condis don't have those tells, but I think you'd look there rather than the UI. I think
Yeah,
that
and
would
I
be
think
the
it's kind of
yeah.
funny because the new lingering curse for Necros, the one that changes their Scepter 3 skill, actually adds an animation to it. So it's kind of like a nerf in a way. Like it makes it AoE, but it also gives you like
There's
this
no-
effect around you
It's not
before it
long
hits.
enough of a wind up though. If it was the cloud and then the tick at the end of the cloud,
Yeah.
I'd be up for it. But it's kind of all at once, right?
Isn't the hit like pretty much at the
I think
same time or before
it's
it?
a little bit before. Like if you have enough
Yeah.
reaction time, I think you can dodge
Right.
the animation.
I mean,
It's
I've
a-
never seen it in PvP because it's not used there, right? So
Hmm.
there's that.
Oh, I think it is. A lot
I
of people
think
actually
Is
do.
it?
It depends on how
Probably
confident you are
sometimes.
and the quality of the queue. But
I have no idea. I don't play.
well, anyway, so
It was
on the
used in
UI
World v
thing
World for
though,
sure, but it's not like you're gonna see that animation in World v World. But yeah,
No, yeah, no, I don't know. I just heard from Vallun like a few weeks ago that it wasn't used in PvP or something. I don't remember.
on the UI side of it, instead of Condi's incoming, one thing I've always felt the game really needed better indication of, and I don't know whether this is because I've got a low IQ, but I would love more visible, more apparent when the enemy has stab, because getting your interrupts through and whatnot, like say I'm fighting a boon beast or something, there's an entire bar of buffs there, and
Yeah, you gotta
interrupts
spot the
quite
right
often.
one.
You got to be quick. So unless you've
yeah. I
been
think there
really
is an animation for like protection and like retile, but you never ever see that, right? And I don't know
Yeah,
if stability
exactly.
has
So
an animation on it, but you probably don't see that either.
that's what I would care about more than anything else. More visible measures to know when those specific crucial boons are up, right? So that you're not wasting interrupts and stuff. I think that would help a lot more casual people and people around my level to make the game, because it's not a problem of like, oh, is this fun to counterplay or whatever. It's just it feels a bit clunky to me to dissect and look at this tiny little element of the UI that is actually quite a defining aspect of the way I'm playing at the moment and what cooldowns I use. So if there's any deficiency there, I think it's that more than Condi's on us, probably.
Also, one thing about the Condi power thing still that I had in mind is corrupts and stuff. Because I mean, on some power builds like Thief, whatever, you can still remove bins. An old power mesmer, your shatters remove bins. But I think the condition ones, especially when they convert the bins into conditions, that feels really bad, right?
Mm.
That's another layer.
Yeah, the conversion. There's a topic we were thinking of later with elite specs and stuff, but like the reason why we see Scourge is so good at the moment is not necessarily because it's a Condi build, right? There have obviously been big DPS carries that aren't Condi builds. One of the big things, really the defining thing about it, is its corrupt potential in a game with so many boons around at the moment. So actually, one niche I think that the game could really look into at the moment, the devs would, is actually power-oriented corrupt builds and like future elite specs and stuff, because I think there's a world there that is still sort of somewhat untouched. I don't know how it would
I
be
mean,
implemented, but yeah.
they kind of did like
I think there's
Spellbreaker, where
more.
you remove boons,
Oh,
and
that's
then you like
true.
do
That's actually
damage
a
while
really
removing boons.
yeah. I mean I feel like an idiot now actually.
Isn't
'Cause,
I
Well, I
think there's
mean,
more
it's not so
power
effective.
specs that remove boons, right? Like Spellbreaker, Thief, Reaper, even Revenant has boon
yeah.
removal now. But like getting a boon corrupted feels a lot worse than removed, right? So I think it's only Reaper that corrupts boons. It used to be a Deadeye skill, but they
Necro.
removed that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that the devs don't pay careful enough attention as well. It's a very different thing, removing versus corrupting, and I think we see a lot of places where there's corrupt at the moment.
And,
That
and
maybe
like
they
cover condies as well. That's like a huge issue as well, because like Burn Guardian is actually a pretty strong build, but it's very easily counterplayable because it has one condition or two conditions. But if you have like
Yeah.
Condi Mirage, where you have a bunch of cover condies on top of it, it's kind of, not only is it like it's hard to cleanse it, but it's hard to actually see how many condies you have, because you look at your bar and then you have to kind of, after like these mental steps that you have to take, like it's sort of instant, but like it's more like wear and tear on your mind, and it's more to think about. It's not just like the fact that you have to keep retargeting the mesmer. It's all of those things combined together. You look at your bar, you look for, do I have confusion on me, or is it just bleeds? Can I use my healing skill, or will that kill me as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Mesmer has a lot of fundamental aspects to it that make it one of those things you're thinking about more stuff while fighting against one. So then you compound that with a Condi build, it's very easy to become quite loathed, I think, and that's why you see so much aggression towards particularly Condi variants.
Yeah, it's like,
recently.
I mean, they're kind of in a corner because like Mirage. I mean, no, just Mesmer in specific. Um, you you kind of need to stay true to the to how it is, right? In some way, like the design of this pack, yeah, or the design of the class. So, I mean, I think people didn't mind power mesmers so much, but people hated that at times as well, especially when PU was meta, when they could stealth for ages.
Oh
And
god, yeah,
especially
yeah. But
from
then that's the stealth thing that I would always
yeah,
take issue.
that's a whole nother thing. But I don't think they minded power as much, although I could be wrong.
Yeah, I didn't. I think Mantra Burst and whatnot is actually okay. It's just the stealth access and uptime on that comes packaged with it that I end up taking issue with, and I feel that way with any bursty build, whether it's a Condi burst or power at the same
Yeah,
time.
it's
It's
definitely
just
like there are definitely like power builds that I deem a lot worse than like the more powerful Condi builds, right? It's the interactivity that is the issue, right? Where I think you feel like against conditions, like you don't really know where you died, you just have all these conditions on you, and that's like the interactivity issue. But like versus like a power stealth one shot, like it's even less interactive, right? But
yeah, weirdly,
probably
on paper, Condi builds are to fight a Condi build is like one of the most interactive things you can do because you get an extra resource you can interact with. You got cleanse available. That's a whole dimension of combat that doesn't exist if we're, in talking about getting globaled by something, right? Because you were slightly out of position and, you never saw a guy come in from behind you. You never saw the end of his Torch 4 animation or whatever as he disappeared a second ago.
Yeah, I mean, HOT, like, even though that had Condi Corona as well, I think around that time was like the peak of interactivity, right? That was, I mean, people didn't really like that they added the specializations and that you couldn't play like the core specs anymore, and they were trash in comparison. But I think that was like the most skilled meta that we ever had.
Really? That's quite
Because
interesting.
there was a lot of interaction. I mean, the Wonders ones, some people had a really hard time adjusting to HOT meta because it was so interactive. They needed to actually think on another level. They needed to think while fighting, right? It wasn't just a burst and it's over, right?
yeah.
It was much more. It was much more of a fight, Wonders run,
I
whatever.
think we talked
Yeah.
about this before.
That actually makes sense.
WP, where like the best meta, in our opinion, is definitely the end of HOT
Yep.
before Condi Thiefin and Heal Rev, but or after that guy.
Yeah.
So I'd be really interested to take 50 people and ask them where their favorite balance was, and that's not just PvP, by the way. In any game type, I'd be most curious. What was the favorite fractal setup that people were enjoying? Maybe Deroir could comment even on that, or in raids or wherever. Where did people find their most enjoyment, and is it now? Is the crucial part. Because I'm quite optimistic about balance. I tend to think it is moving in a good direction, and I always find something to be excited about for the here and now. There's always going to be the ugly side of any meta and any game type, but
PvE wise, I think actually we're in a really good scenario right now. I think actually the one right before we nerfed Mesmer for 5-man, or just nerfed Mesmer in general with the quickness and boon application in general. I think just before that was probably one of the better ones. That was probably where the most people were happy. I think currently, like the current meta as we have it right now, is probably my favorite one because it offers up in PvE. That is, it offers up variety in terms of 5-man and 10-man content in the group compositions.
Yeah, it's really good. Like you can play anything pretty much.
Fucking amazing. Like all DPSs are pretty much on par. The supports, the options that we have with the Revenant and Firebrand or Mesmers and whatnot. Like there's such diversity right now that we just have never seen before. It works really well right now.
That's really cool to hear. Genuinely, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that.
Oh, I'm actually scared of the next balance patch because right now I feel like it is like the golden time for this. Unless it goes in the right direction, it might just kind of mess all of the greatness up.
Yeah, I kind of agree because right now people don't really know what is the best, and that's kind of what makes the meta so diverse. Is that you just play what you're good at, and then that's how the game really should be. It's not like, oh, this is the best no matter what. And so
I mean, I think it's cool that you play different things on different bosses, right? I think it would be very boring if you just played Ellie on every boss. I mean, I think a lot of people liked that you played Ellie on every boss, but I don't understand why. I don't understand.
Because they play Ellie.
Well, but I mean, are only the Ellie players left in the scene? Like, is that what's up? I don't know. I feel like people really liked the Tempest and stuff. I don't know. That's odd.
Yeah, people didn't really, as far as I understand it, a lot of the Ellie mains didn't actually and don't actually like Weaver all that much. They like the pinnacle of Ellie play was Tempest, and then Weaver just kind of got tacked on as a necessity because it was doing so much damage comparable. So you kind of
Going back to this golden age thing, this is really intriguing to me. What are you talking about when this started? A couple of months ago with the most recent domination grandmaster change with Signet of Inspiration. When did this start? Was that it for you?
Well, when like the golden age is right now, in my opinion.
But when did the golden age start? When did we transition?
It started when Signet of Inspiration was made to not share all boons but only extend them.
Be a sand scroll.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yes. Because that opened up for Mesmer getting replaced in some capacity, and not as in getting completely put aside, but there were other options. And immediately after that went live, I went on to try out Power Firebrand. Created a build for that because Power Firebrand is something that I've been looking to play ever since Path of Fire came out, and this was the opportunity for that to potentially take shape, and it did. It turns out Power Firebrand comparable in terms of sharing the quickness, sharing the necessary boons in a 5-man comp in tandem with a Diviner's Renegade is actually really, really effective in a 5-man comp when the faces are so good. But that's not to say that Mesmer is out of the picture at all. Mesmer can still do, like, I think the ultimate or the best daily situation, if you're doing daily fractals, for example, is that you would be running for this challenge mode. You'd actually be running Firebrand and Diviner's Renegade for both of those. That's Nightmare and Shadowed Observatory, and then for the tier 4s, you'd probably exchange those two for a Mesmer, just to have the extra pulls and the portals for the mobility, because the interaction between, or the differences between the two different comps offer up so many different options for what you can do in the fractals. You can be so much more effective now than you've ever really could. You can really optimize for some situations more than you could before.
I feel like it was better for fractals than for raids. I mean,
Yeah.
I think in terms of diversity, it's really good, but I like pugging with the new Chronomancer, especially when you kind of just go for no boon duration and all that. It's an interesting time, right? So you have people obviously playing the SC specs full berserker, and
yeah, which
then,
I don't recommend. For anyone here in chat, I don't recommend looking at that. Don't go to SC for your meta build for Chrono. Not right now. I'm sorry. It's not that SC is bad. It's just that it's a very specialized build for the people that are really good at Chrono and know exactly what they're doing. That aside, you'd rather just go with Diviner's pieces. Get some boon duration. Make it easier for yourself and your group. Do it.
But do you think like maybe this could become the meta soon, and the people are just kind of like slow to get to it? Because I think
no, this is way harder than it was. Like Chrono before it got nerfed. I mean, when it was doing like the chaos bins, the chaos the start thing, and people were running mimic at SOI everywhere. That was so much more broken. You had boons like even in bad groups, like you had permanently like all the boons in the game, right? That was amazing. But now it's it's a bit harder than that. Well, actually, a lot. You can't just shatter and use SOI. I mean, exactly. I like that it's harder, but pugging experience goes down by a lot, and probably like casual players' experience goes down by a lot.
But is that a measure of success? I guess. I mean, because I would argue that. I mean, people should learn to play the class. I guess. I don't mean. I don't mean to say get good, but like, if even the most haphazardly just button pressing before was doing every single boon in the game, then there's something wrong.
I mean, I know that there's something wrong, and obviously that spec was probably the most broken out of any spec that's ever been out. But it's PvE, it's raids, right? So the fact that you're broken doesn't really matter because nobody feels bad about it because the boss is the enemy, right? So you kind of don't really lose fun out of it unless you're one of those tryhard people, I guess. I mean, I don't know. That's something to think about, in my opinion.
But is the fun overcoming the boss, or like just getting the loot? I guess. In pugging situations, I guess, yeah. It's just about getting the loot for most people.
Is it? Well, I don't think like even killing. I wouldn't even say that killing the boss is why it was more fun. Right? It was either kill bosses. I'd say it's just that it's more fun to play with all the boons in the game than not. Right? I don't know.
I mean, yeah. I get the point that you're trying to make. It's the fun over balance necessity, I guess.
Yeah.
If you compare it to like World of Warcraft, those buffs are kind of like just passive, right? Whereas in Guild Wars 2, like you need a class specifically designed to get all those boons out. So I think it's like designed to be more interactive in that way and kind of like timed with each other.
It's good that it's more interactive.
Whereas like the old Chrono was like, no, it's just kind of like a passive thing. They just do their rotation and then do it. Well, I think it's still the same now, right? You just have a different comp.
Man.
I don't know. I think it's fine as it is. I think it's fine as it is. Like the balance. Yeah.
I like it right now. I really like it.
It won't get much better than this, right? Not much.
No. Not unless we introduce completely new factors into the mix. I actually think this is just about the pinnacle of it.
Well, we can talk to their direction that they've laid out, which was when the SOI most recent SOI change went down. They did talk how they essentially wanted, if I might be misinterpreting the blog post, but I don't think I am, that they essentially, you got 9 professions, and they kind of wanted certain professions to hold significant domain over certain boons. And so you would bring those professions to provide those boons, and Mesmer would just compound that. But the idea was, some would excel in some areas. So, like, Guardian was paired off with like AoE stability, right? From this context,
Mm.
and so the idea is, if you really want that in abundance, you're gonna have to get it in the first place from the Guardian, and then the Mesmer goes further. So, talking about that, what do you guys envision they might be pairing off with in the future? Do you get what I mean? So let's talk about.
I
Well,
think
Aegis is easy as Guardian as well, but you get what I
I
mean,
think
right?
yeah, I think to a certain degree we're already a lot of the way actually in the current situation. We're not obviously all the way there with specialized situations, but one of the great things with the comp that we have right now for something like fractals, for example, is exactly that you're bringing only a single DPS to the like full DPS to the group comp. Everyone else is bringing something along with them. You've got the failing strength warrior dealing might and banners. You've got the soul beast with the frost spirit to give everyone else extra damage. You've got the firebrand, which is dealing quickness, momentary, what's it called? Reflects if the if the soul beast isn't around for that, or it's on cooldown. And you've got stability or aegis or even resistance if that's a need be. And then you've got the extremely versatile option that is the revenant, that can either go for just a permanent reflects, or having extra damage, or having healing, or just mega alacrity to everyone. You've got this great comp already of 5 players where only a single one is there solely for the DPS. And I really find that to be quality, because it emphasizes the something that I feel a lot of previous metas have kind of, or previous just balance patches have kind of just glossed over, and it's the importance of just group DPS over single player boosting. That one Ellie with the maximum best rotation is the one that we need boosted with every single boon. No, here it's like the combined the group DPS is what actually matters, and that's where it comes up higher with the firebrand, because the power firebrand got great burst. The power, or the Diviner's Revenant, great burst just for an extra. You've basically got a DPS and a half in those two combined, and it kind of adds up to just being higher than what we had before because of this synergy. Maybe I'm just ranting now, but yeah, I love it. I really like it.
One thing though, I don't mean like rain on your parade here though, but doesn't it kind of like lower the diversity to like disperse the roles? So kind of like with Chrono, you had role compression, so you could have one class doing a ton of things, which means like the other 8 players or other 6 players can run whatever, right? And there's like, how many classes just have pure DPS specs? Now you only have one DPS spot, so that means like
but
say
that DPS spot is pretty versatile. That's kind of
right. But how many DPS players are out there versus how many like are playing the role of
loads.
those other 4? But like
loads,
think
but
of
like,
it like
the soul beast is, for the most part, in many situations, the soul beast, even with the spirit, is going to be top DPS just because of the burst and fractals.
So like NGs, thieves. I guess you have the Guardian is not just a DPS spec anymore. But I'm thinking like how many DPS
DH is still a very sought after option. If you bring a DH to a party for some like Scoreworld or whatnot, you've got massive, intense burst, plus you got the extra block with the shield.
So you think the diversity is completely fine?
There's great diversity in the DPS options that you can take for the different bosses to really optimize for it. I yeah. So even that one spot that is.
The real counter argument to that though is, yeah, you've in past matters, if we talk about role compression and you have multiple DPS slots, the way you would fill those slots, if all it's there to do is deliver DPS, doesn't mean you'll get a lot of versatility in an optimized comp, is it? You're just going to double up or triple up on whatever the highest DPS is of that flavor of the day, as we've seen,
That's
like Ellie
also
is
true,
getting
yeah.
tons
Yeah.
of those in. So that's kind of irrelevant. By having these other 4 slots be designated things, you're guaranteeing 5 separate things. So practically speaking, it would be increased diversity overall, I think. But yeah.
That's what.
Do we
Yeah.
want to talk about this skill changing thing? Because this is a really cool topic to me.
Oh, the like the
Oh, yeah.
lingering
Glacial
curse?
Heart or
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what
Glacial
were you guys thinking about this?
Yeah,
I
so
like it's a pretty good. Oh,
there's
sorry.
like this
Go ahead,
new
Val.
trend with like how ANET is balancing skills is they'll instead of change the trait, they'll make the trait change the skill, right? So like how this exists in the game right now is in Glacial Heart. It used to be whenever you're wielding a hammer and you crit something, it will proc like an AoE chill like on the target, right? And this was kind of like changed because in PvP you could like use like a scepter skill and then swap the hammer, and then your scepter skill would proc the hammer, and it's like, well, I didn't get hit by a hammer, but I got hit by a hammer trait. And so what they did is they instead put Glacial Heart to change Mighty Blow on Guardian's Hammer to like Glacial Blow, and instead now it procs the trait every time you land the hammer too. So now there's like a clear animation there, and in a way it's a nerf, right? And it's good for the game, but it's like an interesting way that allows them to not only balance skills but also to kind of like skill split, right? Because if you're using Glacial Heart as like a PvP trait, but not, I mean, this might not be a good example because there's not much else in, I think that's in Virtues to take if you're in like PvE, but like you would take Glacial Blow in PvP, for example, and if there's a better trait for PvE, you would just use Mighty Blow or something like that. So it's kind of like interesting because skill splitting was actually a big issue that ArenaNet took a while to actually adopt. So this is kind of like an interesting way that they can also skill split.
Okay, can I ask a question? There's 2 different things here, right? With what they're doing with weapon traits at the moment. Function 1 of their new stuff with weapon traits is that even if you don't have the weapon, you can pick up the trait and get value anyway. So the new Glacial Heart means even if you're not running a hammer, any CC you do will chill now and put a little packet damage out. Or also on Guardian, the staff trait now gives you a heal whenever you combo in a light field, regardless of whether you have the staff. That's part 1. The other part is traits essentially turbocharging skills and changing them and their icons and their art and everything, like we see with Feast of Corruption and stuff as well, right? So what of the 2 things is it you wanted to talk about? Because they're separate, aren't they, really?
So I wanted to talk about like more instances that we could create skills like that. So like potential like one example I was thinking of was, you know, the Mesmer trait in dueling, right? The one that gives them like perma reflect. You guys know about that? Whenever they invade, they get a mirror. I was thinking that they could put that into like maybe like a scepter trait instead, and then like whenever you use Scepter 2, if you block, then you gain mirror afterwards, right? And that way it's tied to a certain trigger and it's more counterplayable. And it's sort of along the lines of that Glacial Heart change where it's like it's tied to a certain skill and it's not tied to a trait which can proc off of basically anything. So it makes it more, it's a nerf, right? But it's also, it makes the skill more tied to something specific. And I like that because it's sort of like, I said this before, it's sort of like a mini elite specialization because it's like it changes the play style with traits, right? But it's not actually like changing the whole
Don't
build.
go calling it that. Okay, they're gonna put out like single skill specializations, alright?
Mini specialization.
Okay, so what, does anyone have any inspiration for another skill trait combo that they like?
There's
I think-
Hammer on Warrior also, because Hammer is pretty one of the worst weapons on Warrior right now. So I was thinking maybe
Earthshaker would be nice to change, right?
yeah, like if
They keep buffing Hammer lately as well. They're clearly aware of Hammer.
yeah, I think they have a Hammer trait already, and they keep changing the balance on it. but it never really sees play no matter what they do to it. So maybe
That
they just need
knockdown's
to.
up to 4 seconds now. I think I remember last patch. 4.
Also, Vallun was thinking about Death. Was it Death Blossom or
Oh yeah, so
how,
like
what was it
dagger
called?
training
Yeah.
on Thief, they could change Death Blossom because that's a really weak skill in PvP. But like, if you take dagger training in PvP and it makes it like more, usable, you could still have the normal dagger training. It's kind of weird because dagger training is good for Condi Thief in PvE, right? So you would take that still. So maybe you don't want to change that. Maybe put it on a different skill and kind of rework that. But
Can you do
get the
something
idea.
with like putting the poison part of that trait into the poison trait that's in the trait line, right?
Yeah, probably.
So
Deadly
it wouldn't be
Arts,
too hard to
Grandmaster.
implement something like that.
Well, see, I think I can predict what the next one of these will be with some
Yeah?
pretty high certainty.
Go
I
ahead.
think so. Only
Fire away.
because only through looking at the history of the game. So this whole thing of a trait augments a skill in a very deliberate and specific way is kind of what the trait system was originally talking about being. And in one of the early blog posts, they were talking about elementalist and staff, and water achievements specifically. So in game, even to this day, right now, if you're playing like core Guild Wars 2 stuff, you can often find old environmental weapons around that have never been patched or balanced. They're like literally launch balance. They'll like describe radius in terms of feet instead of in-game actual numerics and stuff, like just terribly old things. Anyway, one of these items you can actually find in the Cursed Shore is an experimental staff. If you mouse over the skills, one of them is Water 4, so the icy field. But when you mouse over it, you can see their original version of that skill. And it says, create an icy fields, enemies are chilled as they cross it. And then it says, full stop, becomes Maelstrom if traded, full stop. So,
Wait,
anyway,
what?
that's just becomes Maelstrom, M-A-E.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really, really, really old, obviously just a relic of old design pre-2012. Doesn't necessarily have to mean anything, but now we're seeing the devs here in 2019 of doing exactly the same kind of idea. I wonder if they'll look back at that original thing and think, yeah, let's do Maelstrom. So it's a
Wait,
potential.
has it like always had that same flavor text? Like the
Always.
Maelstrom
The
thing?
item in the Curse Short, yeah, always. I've known about this since like
That is so
2013.
curious. Because
Yeah.
like this has happened recently, these changes, and it's been
Yeah,
so
these
long
ones,
since the
yeah.
start of the game,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
one has been in since the start. We had the blog post before the game even came out, and like the French convention as well when they were at Paris had some similar stuff. The first Gendaron Fields demo showed the old format. There was a lot of old warrior ones as well, but that staff one always makes me think. So yeah,
Right.
I'd like to see a water trait maybe. There's a really terrible water trait at the moment, stop, drop, and roll. I've never found any use for. Maybe they'll shuffle around, and yeah, you might see something.
Maelstrom
of
sounds
course,
really
Kind
cool.
of tough on Ellie though because they have so many attunements. So like,
Yeah.
it would have to change multiple skills, whereas right now it only changes one skill for all of the instances.
One thing that's really weird as well is essentially Ellie had a trait back at launch called Blasting Staff, which made the radius of all your AoEs bigger.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
essentially the same thing. It's just there wasn't really, skill UI art
Yeah,
done
it was
on
like
anything.
all skills.
And they got rid of it. They said, "Oh no, we don't like this idea. Just have it by default." And now it's like they've almost gone back on that philosophy a bit, right? With Scepter and Guardian Hammer, and there is a third one they've done very recently, isn't there? Another skill change like this. I don't
Is there?
remember. Anyway,
I think
yeah,
there's
I
one
think there
too.
is. There is
Oh,
a
maybe
third.
Yeah, I
they're
think there was too. I
past.
just forgot.
I mean, even going back a bit to the Mesmer rework, you have Mind Rack becoming an ammo skill is close, right? To the same kind of idea. Changing a skill in a pretty fun. Well, that's not too fundamental, but anyway, yeah. So that's my prediction. Maelstrom, maybe.
I like that prediction. It sounds very likely.
I'd like
If
that
they
one.
still even know it, they might know. That's the thing, though. It's so
yeah,
it's
it's
so
like
old.
completely forgotten. There's a reason why it's still in the game. It's because it's just forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because Corteria is a broken mess filled with awful stuff. But
Yeah.
What about like engineer pistol? Do you think that could use it? I think rifle's fine. It doesn't need to be changed.
I think
Well, yeah.
pistol is pretty well rounded as well.
What you got to look at probably instead of the Maelstrom thing, it's what's really overrepresented or underrepresented or feels a bit crappy. So like I think they looked at Core Guard with the hammer because of its interactivity, and like Vallun said that was that weird thing with it proccing after you weapon swap on pre-existing AoEs and stuff. They probably want to look at things like that. So if we really want to predict what they'll do next, you want to think along those terms. What actually needs something?
Is there anything that's like super broken and uninteractive, just tied to like something? I don't know.
Well, what's super broken and unattractive? That should be easy to say, shouldn't it? It depends what game type we're talking about.
Well, I think it would be PvP in specific. I don't think they would change it in any other game modes in that way. In like the changing the skill and all that.
What
Not
about
sure.
Ranger? I don't know. Is Shortbow used?
Dagger off.
It is
on
used
Ranger,
in
they might do
PvE.
something.
Dagger mainnet.
Dagger main hand PvP.
Well, that's the thing. Like
Now, that'd
you'd
be
have
something.
to put it in Soul Beast then, right? Because it's a Soul Beast only weapon.
Yeah, but I don't think they would do that, right?
Yeah, I don't think
It's
they would
such
do
a
that.
new spec. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
that'll be too
way
much.
too hard to speculate, in my opinion. Like what? I think
Shortbow's
WP
pretty
is the
well
only
rounded.
solid
I'd
thing
say.
to go off of. I don't know. Like they could go with any underpowered weapon, right? That could be a pretty good thing to do, but I don't think they really have done
It's
that.
kind of difficult because it's not like used to. It's not used really necessarily as a buff or a nerf. It's kind of like sort of like horizontal. Like it can be good and bad at the same time, which I think the Glacial Heart one was kind of like both, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's the nerf thing we were doing. I think they did a pretty good job with that. I
I'll
just,
link in chat the staff thing if people are interested.
I don't know. I do want to use
They
hammer
would
on warrior though. I kind of wish that they would do something about that.
Well,
Just
what is
start
the
using
actual
it.
issue with Warriors?
Do like Ajax.
I mean, I do still play. It's just it feels pretty bad.
Frozen ground becomes Maelstrom Australia. That is so weird.
Does it say on the wiki page?
Yeah, it does.
The
When
thing
is this-
about predicting as well is I never would have guessed that Scepter on Necro was in need of it. You know?
Yeah, no, that's such a weird one. You know, it's why did they even want to do that? Is there some specific reason?
I think it was World of
I
World.
don't know. I just saw it and thought Robert G. Yeah, he put so much work in, but that's so probably completely wrong of me to think it in those terms. You know, I really don't know. Don't know.
No one knows. We need insight. Tell us. AMA with PvP team, please. Let's go.
I mean, there's
When do you think
Ben P in the chat, isn't it?
Yeah, Ben P. Ben, hook us up. Yeah. Nah. When do you think the next one's gonna be? I think it's gonna be the balance. I think it's gonna be in what is that? A week and a half?
Oh yeah. Well,
That's true.
isn't it usually a fortnight after a big release we were getting balanced? So I was actually expecting it this most recent Tuesday, and then it was more small scale, wasn't it? That was probably wrong of me because it was just coming out the holidays and they probably needed to time it was working it. But yeah, I'd expect next Tuesday, the one after, somewhere around now, surely.
Something's coming in, and I expect it to be balanced. Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. So I'm kind of scared. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, is there? Okay, so they're gonna do balance for everything, right? It's just yeah.
Well, hopefully they just leave PVE alone and then do PvP. Because like I don't know, maybe I'm a weird opinion, but I feel like it works in PVE right now. Maybe wait a little bit.
It works. Just leave it there.
And then just kind of focus on the game mode that's competitive. Focus on world versus world and PvP. Like just split the shit. Just split it. Split everything. Just gone. Boom. Skill split.
Well,
Let's do it.
that's what the
Separate balance patches. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Like I think they'll change something with PV as well.
100%.
Yep. Like probably something that will break it. Well, not break it, but you know, it'll make it. It'll probably be a fairly big change for at least one class, right?
It's always a question of like, where do they want? Like, what's the end goal here? Like, what are they trying to accomplish? Right? Like, is it to just give Revenant a spot in the limelight in more ways than one, or is it to? I don't know.
Things just change, right? I mean, like I would have loved to play the PvP meta of the end of HOT forever. I could have done that because that was as good as it was gonna get for me. So yeah, but they'll never leave it alone. Yeah, and now I see where PvP is right now. Feels
No.
bad.
Oh, okay. So, look, I can put that into an interesting discussion, right? So, philosophically, when they release a new batch of elite specializations, they're deliberately you're not going to get perfect gap balance out the gate. So, accepting that fact, best to push them out overtuned so that people have fun and feel like they got their money worth, and nerf them back. The cost of that, though, is destroying any semblance of a meta people like. That's why your favorite HOT meta disappeared, because POF was delivered in that philosophy.
Yeah,
Would
of
you
course.
prefer a future batch do the reverse of that and basically release elite specs that they know are pretty limp and undertuned?
It's bad for
Do you
the
think they're in the
game.
best of both worlds?
Well, I mean, wasn't
I
that
mean-
what Soul Beast and Renegade were basically?
No, I think that they probably tried to overtune those as well, but missed the mark as as an accident rather than.
Renegade.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
but I
maybe,
mean,
no, maybe not with Renegade. Maybe Renegade was deliberately crap in PvP because they hate the zoo stuff. Maybe that's you might be right on that.
I mean, the Renegade thing was interesting because I think it's still like this. When you put down one of your utility skills, right? It checks for pathing. So
Yeah,
it's
it
it's
is
not
bad,
like
yeah.
you don't just put down a summon. It's like a teleport. So if you can't teleport there, you can't put down a spirit in there, right?
You can't put it on world versus world walls and stuff, for example.
You can't do that. You can't, like, even if you're, say you're standing on a rock in PvP, you can't put it next to you because you're standing on the rock, right?
Yeah.
Unless you detarget, right?
Okay, so there's one thing to
click on
do
your
this.
UI.
No, I mean, well, yeah, but that's to put on yourself. That's the only way to do it in like non-port spots. You just put your cursor on your UI and then you press the skill, then it works. But
I
that's
mean, you could
super
just
clunky.
skill click. That
And you
would
can't-
be
That's only
doing.
you.
You can't
one
move
action.
when you're doing that either, because otherwise that'll cancel it. So that's like, I don't think they even tried to design it for PvP at all. Like they just kind of.
And that's not even talking about short bow, which has got the projectiles move at such a speed that they'll just miss from basic strafing and stuff. It's just
The skill 2 is. Oh my god. Okay, when you use it, you'll be lucky if even one of the arrows hit. Alright, they're so slow and they come at such an awkward angle. It's so bad. I don't know. It's and also at the start, I don't remember if it's still like this, but just using your skills backwards, it wasn't a thing, right?
yeah.
On other skills, you could like kind of fiddle around. You could do a lot of stuff. You could kite and use the skills, but with this, you literally need to backpedal,
Yeah.
which is
And
very
if you
odd.
can't counter pressure while kiting, it's immediately a big disadvantage.
Yep.
But
It's-
again, I think that the devs may have decided Renegade wasn't too much as a PvP.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah,
might be
they
the
just-
one example. I think everything else, they probably just thought, screw it. I mean, look at how ludicrous Firebrand was at the start, right? It's just
I
And what-
love that. Holy shit, I love that.
that
Burning
Aegis
everything.
and stuff on an auto attack. I mean, come on, it's
48k, please, let's go. Thank you.
mental.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it would be good if they just did undo tune specializations next. People wouldn't be too interested in them. People need to like be drawn by the specs, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. But what I was thinking with that is, yeah, we're not in a good position. It's a shame that old metas get obliterated, and even
Yeah.
really good metas do. But I think that this is the only way realistically to do it and have.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's
It's
just
also
the
Maybe
way
more
it goes.
aggressively cull them, but then people feel like they don't get their money's worth. Sorry, Van.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult at this point because now like we have 2 elite specs already. So from here, like to create a new elite spec, they have to kind of like do something new. Like, do we really need another DPS spec for Guardian? Do we really need another DPS spec for Thief? You know, are we doing support Thief next or something like that? You know,
No,
And-
DPS, let's go.
Did you
Like,
ever get far to make?
I would actually cry if Thief got a medic specialization. I know some people really want Sind want it. No. I just want Thief to remain a brawl. Sorry, I had to go on a tangent there.
yeah,
Like-
it's like they need like a new kind of like role though, kind of, if that makes sense.
But like Thief is, to me, Thief is a lot of different ways of managing a brawler
Yeah.
type, right?
I can understand like Thief
I-
not getting a different role, but say like Guardian or Ranger, like those.
Yeah.
Even Ranger can probably.
I don't think it's about roles. I don't think they think too hard about roles. I mean, obviously it has some play in it, but like they
You
just
don't think
make
so?
a new design and then they like just because they just need a design idea. You can have it
The
be a
flavor.
DPS spec. Yeah, the flavor exactly.
Yeah.
Like Mirage is a very flavor-ish thing, right? Even though it's like people hate it and it's all that, but it's very specific thing, very specific type of mesmer, right? That's all they need.
Yeah, I think we'll
Agreed.
see in terms of role delineation and stuff. They'll probably go a little bit more like Soul Beast was for POF, which really wasn't clearly defined in any one specific angle. And then they just see where the chips fall with how they originally place it and refine the bits away they don't like. I think we'll find they do that more and more over time. And the truth is that even if there's 20 DPS specs that already exist, the ones that will continue to sell during elite specializations will be the one with some capacity to DPS. So that's always just going to be a thing that's on there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the new elite specializations are always going to be better and obviously more interesting because they're new, and
Yeah.
because they have the designs. So
Change for change's sake, and people
Yeah.
will lap it up. I'm gonna have to go in about 5-10 minutes, by the way, guys. So sorry.
Okay. Yeah, we can probably end.
That's
then.
fine for me. Yeah.
yeah, we
As
can
well.
wrap it out. Wrap it up. Yeah.
Good chat, lads.
Is there something you want to talk about still at the end, or is this? Or just end
No,
here?
we can just.
Any short thing?
I mean, is there anything else? Like any questions that?
Oh yeah, chat
anyone
Q&A.
has from-
5-minute Q&A. Let's go.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say, one of the potential topics today was about the way Elder Dragons look.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
in my videos, I was talking a lot about this recently, and the worm kind of idea of Krauk and stuff, and we were talking about his wings. I just want to sort of backtrack a bit on some of my words recently. In the novel, they do quite explicitly describe him as having wings quite often. So I don't know, maybe that's still in store. That's all I wanted to say on that. Just a tiny little thing.
I kind of want to see. I just want to see his whole body, and I know that's
Me too.
that's likely not going to happen ever. Maybe in a cinematic, but other than that, I don't think it's going to happen.
Hey, what do
think
you
it might.
think? You know, when Heart of Thorns came out, they showed us a type of cinematic we haven't seen ever since, which was the first one with Ritlock. They actually repurposed it as a cutscene at the very start of Heart of Thorns. It plays when you're at the back of the Silver Waste. You know that kind of art style. We might see Kraukatoric in a cutscene of that style, not in engine, not full
Please.
CGI,
Yeah,
but like that.
like
Yeah?
the half. But
Yeah,
they,
exactly.
I'm pretty sure they had a different that was the trailer for Heart of Thorns. Never mind. Don't listen to me.
Well, what I'm talking about was kind of a trailer for HOT as well. I'm talking about the one where he walked up to the precipice and he lifts Sohothan out and he's like,
Yeah,
and
that
then a
one.
Wyvern attacks him. That one.
But I
yeah.
don't know if that was made in house. That's the thing.
Oh yeah, different. Probably right. I doubt that was.
Because I remember very clearly that the actual CGI trailer that was made to look like it was in game. Do you know the one where they were fighting the Wyvern and we saw Modromoth for the first time?
Yeah.
That was made outside of the house, outside of the arena studio. That was made by another company.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm talking about then. So
Yeah.
maybe they could do a similar thing for Krauk.
I would
And they
love to
already
see that.
showed
I
they
would
cared to
love
use it as a cutscene in game. You know,
Yeah.
so we'll get a new one.
I'd
I think
like
that-
either to see his body or at least like a sense of kind of what he is, because isn't he supposed to be some sort of storm, right?
I mean, that's kind of what they were trying to do at the end of Path of Fire, right? Turned him. So all of the storm that you see in the background of his head is him. It's supposed to be him, right?
I mean, I think that was pretty good, but that was a very brief period of time. We really didn't get to see much of it, as in like how that would work. You know, I don't know.
Isn't it just
storm
like
that
all
projects-
kind of like metaphorical though? Like how they
yeah.
I think it's kind of a combination of the two. Like I don't think it's supposed to be a metaphor, but I don't think it's supposed to be the actual like
he
representation.
is kind of
do you
like a
know what I mean?
storm,
Like-
but he's not just a storm. He's a storm and a dragon.
He's an entity
Yeah.
within the storm, but the two go together. So it's
Yeah.
I mean, there's a degree of poetry that they're deliberately flirting with that description. You know, it's the
But-
brand storm, right? Like everywhere that
Yeah.
the brand is lightning and crazy. So I can see why you'd call him the storm itself at the same time, but I do think that's somewhat metaphorical.
If
Seeing him
anything-
under the lightning, that would be cool.
If anything, if they at least after we defeat him, and I'm assuming that we're gonna defeat him. If they just leave his crystalline body as a new map, basically just sprawled across the entire thing, and his
Dude,
his
the new
his
Monster
corpse is
Hunter did that.
basically just exactly basically just an entire corpse. That's a new map.
Yeah, what
I
were you
wouldn't
thinking
mind.
of Monster
I just
Hunter
want to see
World,
the
though,
entire thing. I just want to see the entire thing.
They showed Zaitan,
Somehow.
right? But from afar. Like, that's how they got him.
Well,
into
no,
the
they
whole
popped
screen.
out as Zaitan. They went back to it later and showed us his tail in the Dermot Priory archives, but you don't actually see his body. It's a bit of a conspiracy theory that he never
Yeah.
died. There was no magic explosion either. Tinfoil hats. But yeah, so
Yeah,
All right.
it's gonna be
Yeah,
interesting though. How do we finish him off? In a pretty way? Yes. Riding in on Aurene, the ghost of Aurene coming out of the chugging a spear. All right.
I hope
Good
it's
thought.
gonna be better than Mordermoth, but I don't know. Yeah, we'll see.
You didn't like
doesn't take much
Mordrama?
to beat Mord.
I didn't like Mordermoth so much. I don't think it's so bad, but it's not like exactly what I'd want either, right?
I kind of liked
feel like-
Mordramoth because he was always present. Unlike Zaitan, who felt very absent from the story. Mordramoth was always like fucking with us, you know?
The devs really
Yeah.
messed up with Zaitan, right? Because narratively,
Yeah.
him being distant and menacing is a thrilling thing. But then they had the opening trailer of the game.
Where they
spoil
showed
what he
him.
looked like and stuff, and they have the loading screen in a RAR spoil what he looks like. It's such a mistake, man. It's just a stupid decision that's undermining. Well,
Wait,
don't get me started.
does it spoil what he looks like? Like
Yeah.
that badly?
A
Entirely.
RAR story mode.
Shows
It's
the
like a
entire-
portrait of him.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's ludicrous. It's anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, guys ready to go?
Yeah, good chat, lads.
That was a good
Oh,
one.
this is fun. Thanks for inviting me, Vallun.
Episode 2 coming in.
You guys wanna like plug anything, like your Twitters or something like that?
I guess
Follow me on
my
Twitter.
stream.
Easy.
Deroir Gaming at Twitter.
I don't do
Deroir on
anything
Twitter.
else anywhere else. I'm just kidding. But yeah. I think people know us, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
Hey,
sorry. That's,
I'll have
that's my bad.
all the links in the YouTube video as well. So, got you guys.
Yeah, I'll put people's Twitch channels in the chat right now or whatever.
Have a good
Value.
evening, guys.
Yeah, you too, man. Good chat.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for the yeah. Hi. I don't know what to say.
All right, let's host Teapot because this is the Lidl
Lidl tea time coming in.
God
Was
damn
that
it! I
one
can't even
note?
link
Yeah.
things. What the fuck?
One link.
There you go. Done.
There we go.
All right, thanks.
And also,
by the
Vallun.
way,
follow, subscribe to Vallun. Let's go.
Yeah,
Easy.
get Vallun
Setting-
partnered.
Setting up this Lidl tea time.
yeah,
It's good.
we can do more of these, but it's not like a scheduled thing. It's just like if we have topics to talk about, you know.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
we'll
just let me know,
schedule
as and
them.
Wendy.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll see about that.
All right,
Mod
thanks,
check.
guys.
I'm not a mod. Feels bad, man. All right. Right. Bye, stream.
Are you gonna wait? So you're gonna upload this on YouTube, right?